This is Clive.
This is Chris.
This is Adrian.
This is Lisa.
This is Ben, and you're listening to the Wood Fired Oven Podcast with Mark Gostin.
The great thing about hosting a podcast is it gives me the opportunity to sit down and chat with some really amazing people. The Wood Fired Oven community is full of very talented, friendly and generous folk, all who are so happy to impart their skills and knowledge onto us. From amazing home cooks to food historians to wood-fired oven designers and manufacturers, this community I have found myself in is rich, it's vibrant and incredibly talented. When I was researching which wood-fired oven I would purchase for my family, it didn't take me long to discover today's very talented guest and his extraordinary passion for wood-fired ovens. The gorgeous D105 brick oven I chose and purchased from today's guest a couple of years ago has inspired, delighted and connected me with cooking with fire again. And for that, I'm very grateful. Ben Guilford from the Firebrick Company here in sunny Melbourne, Australia. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm now suddenly nervous. What an introduction.
We've been
how do I
talking for a
follow
while.
through? How do I follow through after that? Oh, that's very nice. Thank you. That's lovely.
You're very passionate and you're very talented. We've been chatting prior to coming on the mic and you've got an amazing setup here. You've got an amazing team of people around you. Must be a great place to come to work.
It is. I feel very spoiled.
Yeah.
Very spoiled. And I think part of that spoiledness is in the opportunity to talk to customers. When I do get to talk to customers, particularly once they've bought their oven, they built it, like yourself,
yeah.
And then they've had this fantastic experience and they're so grateful. Like, you know, the feedback that we get is just so lovely. It's uplifting. So I get to indulge my passion for making stuff, but then get this affirmation from customers who are grateful. So it's lovely.
And you must get to see a lot of photos because I think every second swipe on Instagram for me seems to be either a P85 or a D105. There's a lot of folk around the world who are building your ovens, and that must be very satisfying.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And I think something that we tell customers all the time is when they've just bought their oven and we say, please take a whole bunch of photos, send them to us. I think sometimes people think, oh, they've probably seen all the photos. They're bored with it. No, not at all. not even close.
No,
we love it.
Hundreds and hundreds. Yeah, it's great, isn't it? That feedback must be so good.
I mean, there's something that's really fun in getting a photo from someone in America.
Yeah.
Not Australian listeners. I love you.
Yeah,
you too.
There are a lot of them.
But there's like getting a photo from someone so far away who's built one of our products and they're loving it and they're cooking in it. I don't know. It's very satisfying.
Yeah, that's great. Let's set the scene for our listeners. Now, I've flown down to Melbourne. I've driven in your Melbourne traffic today.
It's gorgeous, isn't it?
Oh,
so good.
That's another story. I was a little late. Sorry about that.
I'll forgive you eventually.
Where are we? Where are we sitting now?
So we are about 40 k's southeast of Melbourne town in Hallam, which is basically you've got Hallam and Dandenong side by side, and it's one of the Southern Hemisphere's largest industrial centres.
Is it? Really?
So we're in a factory complex here in Hallam.
All right.
That we've been in since 2011.
Okay, and we're currently obviously doing an in-person interview, which is nice for me. We're sitting in your staff room, which is on level 2 of one of how many factories have you got here?
We have 7 factories here. Yes.
So it's a fairly big outfit you've got here.
They're not enormous factories. So just so that people don't think we're, like got a gigafactory like Elon Musk or something.
It's not quite that size.
It's
bigger than my garage. Yeah.
It's bigger than your garage, yes. We started off in 2011, started with one factory. And I think it probably stayed that way for about 4 years. And then a neighbour in this complex, so there's 27
So you've been in this place downstairs?
Since 2011.
Since 2011.
We've been in this complex since 2011. And so, a few years after starting, one of the neighbours directly across from our factory, one of the other factories said, I don't really need this much space. And I said, well, frankly, I could use a bit more. Do you want to split it? And so we went halvies and I started using half of his factory and eventually we took that one over and then it's just been this slow, very organic process of growing where as we've grown and expanded, we sort of get to this point where, oh, gee whiz, we could really use a little extra space. And then lo and behold, another factory will come up for lease and we'll think about it. Don't just always take them.
Yeah.
But we've slowly been taking on more as they've been needed. So.
And so 11 years later, you've got 7 they're not that many factories. You haven't decided to take on one big factory and to combine all those together?
Yeah. Well, that's a question we get all the time. And it's a really good question because, well, why wouldn't you? Surely there's some savings or something to be made. We've got the 7 factories for a few reasons. One of them is it was like it was an organic process where we certainly couldn't afford to rent a 4,000 square meter factory straight away. No chance. It's not like we have some giant backers, just pumping in hundreds of thousands of dollars.
No, Elon Musk's just yet, not quite
not
yet.
And frankly, not ever. Like because Kate and I own the business.
Yeah, fabulous.
It's us. We don't have any. I don't know what you even call them. People who own part of the business. It's just us. And so we've grown very organically. So we couldn't start really big. And so that's how we've ended up with 7. But you could say, well, all right, why don't you find now? Let's get the 4,000 square meter mega factory and set up in there.
Wouldn't there be some efficiencies in doing this?
Look, there could be. So you may actually get it slightly cheaper per square meter, let's say.
Okay.
But there's a few things. One of the things is having lots of small factories gives you some flexibility. So let's say at the moment things are going great, and we are so grateful for like the number of ovens that we're selling. It's sales are picking up in America as well. It's exciting.
Yeah.
And it's been that way since 2011. It's just been this slow growth, 30% per year, just growing and growing. It's been brilliant. Right. What if that's not always the case? So what if something happens and sales stagnate or maybe go backwards? If we're in one massive space, we are stuck with that. And it is a huge cost, whether it's a lease or a mortgage. It's a massive cost and it's not flexible. But if you have, say, 7 smaller factories, you could let one go, put it up for lease, and then you're saving that money. So we could scale. If we had to scale down to half the size we are now, we could do it.
That, yeah.
It would be horrible.
Yeah.
I don't want to, but it's technically possible.
Was COVID a concern for you when it turned up in terms of how that was going to impact you and your staff and your family?
Yeah. I remember Christmas, I was like following it on the news. It was just this, thing that was happening in some province of China that I'd never heard of. And I remember watching it going, that doesn't look great.
No, it doesn't look good.
And as it really, sort of March of 2020, it was really sort of rearing its head here. And I remember saying to my wife, all right, this could go either way. And I think maybe people might stop spending money. Frankly, I think they'd be smart to. Like, it's so uncertain. I think a lot of people will stop spending money on their dispensable income. They might hold on to that.
Yeah.
Which would be fair enough. And I said to Kate, well, like wood-fired ovens, like they're awesome. You don't need one to live.
No.
It's nice.
Yeah, it's
they're really nice to have, but you don't have to have one.
Of course.
And so I said, well, mate, we don't know what's going to happen here. We need to cut all of our possible costs. So we looked at everything that we were spending money on business-wise. We got rid of some extra bins that we were renting and gas bottles and all these little things that we could try and save money.
Streamlined a little bit and prepared for the worst. And
then basically about a month later, governments around the world just came out with various job saver packages like JobKeeper. And all of a sudden people's jobs were secure.
Yeah.
But now they were bored. They're stuck at home. Sales went up 75%.
You're joking.
It was insane.
75%? Really?
Yeah, on the year before, which had already been a good year.
Wow.
And we're just like, what is
That's
going
incredible.
on? So
hold on, all your staff now stuck at home, or are they allowed to come to work?
That was the thing. So we were manufacturers.
Yeah.
And so we were allowed to keep working.
Is that right?
Yeah. So and I tell you what, half of the fun was keeping up with all the changes. So it was like every week there was a new rule would come out, or a new some kind of level of lockdown, let's say, because Melburnians, we know all about lockdowns.
Yes, you
don't want to talk about it though.
You do.
Okay?
Oh my gosh.
Right? You up there in Queensland
just kicking back in the sun. So but look, I'm a pilot, and through the last 2 years, industry that I've been in, we've been very busy. We fly freight around the country, and we've had to do similar. Every week we've gone flying. We've had to get our border passes. We've had to understand what the different states are now allowing and not allowing you to do.
Yeah.
So many industries have been impacted over the last couple of years. But your business has been pretty resilient.
Well, we were super fortunate, eh? Like we basically had to just keep up with, all right, what are the rules? Are we allowed to keep, it was every time new rules were coming out, I'm like, right,
Oh, yeah.
can we keep going?
Yep.
And we did have one very severe period where we had to cut down, I think, to 30% of our normal workforce, but we were still allowed to keep going.
Great.
But it was hard. It was hard in this, like, I think for us, I am not complaining. I am not in any position to complain. We are so fortunate.
Yeah, very much so.
Whereas, like, we know people in the hospitality industry who, man, they just got slammed.
Oh, absolutely.
And, and some of them, like Charlie Carrington at Atlas Dining, he's brilliant. He just pivoted, bang, to doing, he would film, like, cooking at home. So live, you cook along with Charlie, watching live. He would send you out a full package of, like, here's all the ingredients that you need, all the special sauces. They're all prepared.
Great.
And like, so I would say we were very fortunate that we didn't have to say pivot to it. I hate the word pivot. If you say the word pivot or unprecedented,
are they
I'm walking.
Are they anti-words? Okay. I'll just pivot.
No. So anyway, I would say we were so fortunate, and look, having to, like, jump through those hoops and try and stay on top of it, that's just a minor thing. The fact that we were able to keep going and keep our guys all employed,
that's great, isn't it?
It was absolutely fantastic. So yeah, and not only did we keep them all employed, but we had to take on more people to keep up with the demand. So
unbelievable.
Very, very blessed.
Okay, Ben, you have a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering, a Bachelor of Technology Aerospace.
Yes.
You graduated with honours in 2008. Now, that's a pretty impressive resume, even before we start talking about the details of your wood-fired oven business. That's amazing. Can you cook in your wood-fired ovens as well as you make and design them?
I'll be honest. I am a much better engineer than I am a cook.
Do you suck a bit?
I don't suck. Okay, that's right.
Come on, I've seen your videos.
You be nice.
I've seen your videos, and your food looks your food looks really great.
Well, so that's what happens when you cook it like 6 times before you actually present it to the camera. So I'm not like Clive. Like Clive, the wood-fired oven chef, man. That guy,
he rocks, and he was
amazing.
So pumped to hear you're coming on the show.
Man.
And
I love Clive. I've actually chatted to Clive for quite a while.
Yes, he mentioned he had a great chat with you.
We did this video. He did this video on retained heat cooking.
That's right.
And we got to have a great chat about that. But Clive, when he's filming, like, say, I think there was a fish dish that he did, and he cooked it like 4 times because each time he would pull it out of the oven and it wasn't quite visually perfect.
That's correct.
So I'm not like that.
Yeah.
For me, like, say
I think
that
he did that with
smoking
the steak as well. He was saying it was about 4 pieces of steak or something. I think he said he had to just to get the different shots.
I mean, and
his work is amazing.
It is incredible, and it is just. It's beautiful.
It is.
There's
and
no
if you
other way
haven't
to
listened to that episode, check out season 1 of the podcast. He was a second guest last season. A must listen.
It was a really enjoyable listen. And if you haven't seen his stuff, just look up the Wood-Fired Oven Chef on YouTube.
It's amazing.
And if you like wood-fired cooking, it's actually, he's got this lovely music.
Oh.
Anyway, sorry.
I could talk with Dad about his music. I did. It's gorgeous music. Anyway, so you cook pretty good.
No, I can cook. I enjoy cooking. And that's part of the reason I got to this place of, like, running this business is I do enjoy cooking. I am probably a better engineer than I am a natural cook. If you put a recipe in front of me, I can do it.
Okay. So
I actually love baking. Because baking is like the engineering of cooking.
It is.
It's not. If you said, Ben, I need you to make a stir fry, we're gonna have a problem. It's like, is there a sauce that you can give me? Like, is there, like, where's the instructions?
Yeah.
Oh no, just cut up some stuff and put it in the pan. I like the I think, and it's probably reflected in our instructions for the oven. It's like very detailed.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Step by step.
That's good.
Covering all the questions, and I'm probably the same in terms of cooking.
Okay.
I like detail, so I sort of know what I'm doing and get that confidence. But yeah.
Do you come from a family of engineers?
No. My mum was I believe a stenographer. She dictation and type.
Sure.
She could write in shorthand.
Really?
It's little squiggles.
Oh,
it's crazy.
I know. You know that has its history in ancient Rome.
I did not know that.
Cicero's secretary, Tiro, came up with the first modern shorthand, and a lot of those shapes and words that are used today came from Tiro. Anyway, Roman history.
Okay.
Anyway, another story.
I did not know we were going to go there today.
No, that was a surprise even for me. Okay,
but so my dad, it was funny. I haven't told many people this. Until I was probably about 8, I thought he was a cowboy.
Really?
Which is older than I should have been. So firstly, we lived in Blackburn in Melbourne, which is like a suburb, around Melbourne City. There's no cows. There's no fields to go lasso the cows in, right?
Did he have a tractor?
He had a cowboy hat.
Oh, did he?
He wore a cowboy hat all the time, and I was convinced that he was a cowboy for way too long.
That's such a gorgeous story.
Turns out he taught maths and physics at high school.
Okay.
Yeah. Not lassoing.
Not cowboy stuff.
Not cowboy stuff so much.
But hang on, maths and physics.
Maths and physics
must have rubbed off a little bit.
I think, I think in terms of my attraction to like engineering, part of that would have come from my dad for sure.
Did you play with Lego and stuff as a kid?
I loved Lego. I loved Duplo, which is the much larger, more clumsy Lego. But I remember being probably maybe 6 or 7 and just playing around like with blocks and stuff on the floor. And I wasn't just trying to build like a little castle. I remember, what do they call those systems where you release a ball and it triggers something else? It triggers something else. It's got a name.
Those kinetic-y type things.
You start a process and then it will run through and it triggers off all these other things step by step. A chain reaction.
Yep.
It's got a name and it's just you'll paste it over the top now. Anyway,
that was right. Well done. Yeah.
I'll be trying to make these things with using rulers as like some flexible thing and trying to make these structures. It was just for fun. But I think I've always had an attraction to making things. Even before I had any of the skills that you sort of need to do that. I just loved making stuff.
So going into uni, doing your mechanical engineering and your Bachelor of Technology Aerospace.
Yes.
Why aerospace?
I think at the time it was, so I'd graduated high school, like year 12, and I'd done reasonably well. And so I had the option of doing it. And look, jets are cool, man. You know that.
They're pretty cool.
They're cool.
They go fast.
They go fast. And they're fascinating. And so
they are.
I just had this attraction to it. I just thought that sounds amazing. And the fact that I could do it as a double degree. Mechanical engineering, hey, that's got a whole wide range of application. Aerospace.
It's pretty specialised.
It's pretty specialised.
Yeah. You make stuff fly.
Yeah, you make stuff fly. You end up probably making weapons mostly.
Oh, okay.
That's a lot of aerospace stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I found it fascinating.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't really I didn't look around and go, maybe I'll do some other degree. It was just, I could do that. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Sign
right.
me up.
You'll do it. Yeah, great. And you enjoyed doing it.
I did. I had a great time. And it's interesting. You're like, do you need a degree for doing this? It's like, not really, no. But
it's what it trains your mind, though. It's how it crafts and molds you, I think.
It trains you in, so you learn the technical aspects of how things work, let's say. There's a good way of thinking about it, but it also teaches you how to think and how to approach problems.
Yep.
And it sort of trains you in that as well. But no, it's interesting. I think, did I really need to do that course? Was that really worthwhile? So I studied a few things that have direct use here. One of them is heat transfer. It's one of my favorite subjects.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. Yeah.
So how heat is transferred from one medium to another, and understanding that, and actually being able to do the maths on it as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I actually did an internship at an aerospace company. I did 2 separate internships, and one of them was 3 months at this aerospace company, and they had me. My whole job was to take an electronics enclosure, a little aluminium box, and figure out how hot it was going to get when it was sitting in this particular. It was for a stealth fighter thing. It was awesome.
Cool. It does sound cool. Are you allowed to tell me the stuff?
I think it's okay.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry. I'm not going to give you any detail. But basically, it was to figure out, well, how hot is this box going to get with a given amount of power being put into it, which is then being expended as heat. How hot will it get inside this box when it's sitting in this aircraft on the runway at full power, but waiting to take off for an extended period of time?
Yeah, right.
So worst case scenario.
Yep.
And so I got to spend 3 months developing this little piece of software that would calculate that for you. And so I got to do all this very detailed work in heat transfer. Oh, it was awesome. Yeah. That was the peak of my aerospace work.
That sound pretty cool.
It was cool.
There were no wings, but it did sound pretty cool.
They ended up using that. So they ran that software on the design of the box they were using, and it was going to overheat. They flew in engineers from the UK.
Did they?
This is the highlight of my whole engineering career. And so they flew people in from the UK to assess my work, and then they changed the design because they recognised it was going to get too hot.
Okay.
And they still use it. This is the cool thing. Years later, I called my old boss, and they're still using that little piece of software.
That is pretty cool.
That's kind of cool.
Well, speaking about heat,
Yes.
Were you allowed to play with fires? as a
I
kid?
remember lighting my first match.
No, you don't.
vividly.
Really?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Wow.
So that's huge. Fire is massive for me.
Yeah.
So I love making things
Yeah.
and I like fire.
Yeah,
Are
cool.
you seeing a link here?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I'm about to ask you why on earth wood-fired ovens. But
Yes.
we'll get-
Well, and why wood-fired
yeah,
ovens, right?
why wood-fired ovens?
Because it could have been, making
Silver
unmanned
boxes
area
and-
vehicles or silver boxes, exactly, right? And they're kind of fun.
Yeah.
So I graduated 2008. And some may remember 2008 as the start of the global financial crisis.
it's a bit
So
of a
the
tough
places
time.
I'd done these internships and they'd actually expressed interest in hiring me, which was
Right.
I was super excited.
Yeah,
about,
that's
right?
cool.
I was so excited. And so I remember thinking, earlier on in 2008, I was so keen to apply for these places and start that engineering career, that I thought was out ahead of me. And then, later in the year, the crisis is really starting to take off. And I called my old boss from the internship and I said, I'd love to apply. And he said, look, if you get another option, you should probably take it because it's looking pretty bad. They ended up firing 50% of their engineers.
Did they? Oh,
Yeah,
geez.
so they had over 100 aerospace engineers hit the jobs market. And then the other place fired 35% of their workforce. And it was like, okay.
Yeah, we need to think about plan B.
And so in terms of a graduate aerospace engineer, you need to think about a plan B at that point.
yes.
Because the market is flooded with experienced aerospace engineers looking for a job.
Yeah.
So grad positions just disappeared. They dried up. So I went into civil construction.
Okay.
And anyway, as I was working in that field, so I was working in civil engineering on site, and my dad built an oven at home with my little brother.
Did he?
Yeah. So he built this brick oven down in the yard, and it's just made out of old pressed red bricks. He'd what they'd done. I don't know where they got the plans from, but basically he just made a big pile of sand, big mound of sand, and he threw all the bricks over the top and mortared it together.
Yep.
And then he filled he filled the cavity, so built the walls up.
Yep.
I think it was built on solid concrete. The stand was concrete. There was no insulation at all. It was just bricks on a concrete stand, and then this brick dome, and then more sand over the top of it. Just lots and lots of sand.
Lots of sand.
I think there were some bottles in there or something as well.
Yeah,
maybe,
yes,
but lots of
yes,
sand.
yeah.
And then capped it with some sheet metal or something. And I remember I saw it, and I was like, it was like a magnet. I was like,
You're blown away by it.
I have to build one of these.
That is so cool.
I have to do this. And no offense, Dad, but I have to do it a little better. Well, there's a problem with Dad's
That's
oven,
awesome.
and this is one of the reasons we put all our instructions online, is to show you, hey, this is how you can build a good oven. You don't have to build one of ours, but if you follow our instructions and do your own, you'll end up with something that works really well because it uses all the right materials and it's insulated and so on. I went away thinking I've got to make one of these things. So I ended up, I started the process. My dad gave me a little bit of money for Christmas and said, you should put this into building a wood-fired oven. So I got started. I built the stand.
Okay.
All the money was gone.
How old are you now?
I am 30, nearly 40.
Okay.
I'm so close to 40.
Okay. No,
Perilous.
when your dad helped you out.
Oh, that would have been 2010.
Okay,
So
all right,
yeah.
okay.
It's
All
a
right.
while back.
Okay.
I was younger.
Yeah,
I had more
yeah,
hair.
younger.
Yeah.
I don't know. You got a gorgeous fluffy beard
Mane
on
of
you.
beard, yeah,
Yeah,
not
you've
a
done
lot
very
on the
well
top.
there.
Yeah, well, anyway, so I went away going, all right, I'm going to build this up. And I built the stand and all the money was gone. And so then I started looking around for fire bricks. I knew that I needed to use fire bricks and I needed all this high temperature insulation and all these things. So I started trying to track all that down. And it was just, what I found was the companies that sold it, they were really set up to supply heavy industry. So they would sell fire bricks, but they'd sell container loads of fire bricks for building a smelter.
Right.
Or relining a smelter or something like that. They weren't really interested in little Ben coming in wanting his 100 bricks, and maybe a roll of insulation and so on. And so I found that I was getting the prices that I was getting were just ferocious. They were just wild. And I was like, I don't think I can afford to do this. I tell you what.
Was this a business idea at this stage, or was this just for
at this
home?
stage I just wanted to build an oven at home.
Oh my
That's all I
gosh.
wanted to do.
Oh.
And so I tell you what, I came so close to not having this business, really. If I had found, so I was looking on Gumtree and eBay trying to find, maybe I can find some used fire bricks, something that I could afford. And I hunted and I'll tell you, if I had found them, I might have just bought them and then never started the business.
Really?
I've not really thought a lot about
Yeah,
that.
right.
But if I had found 100 fire bricks of good quality at a reasonable price, I might have just bought them and then never gone any further. Built the oven and not thought any more of it. in the end, I couldn't find what I wanted. I came so close to buying some, but I didn't buy them. And a friend of mine, Ashley, was importing beekeeping supplies. Right?
Okay.
He was bringing in beekeeping supplies, so like honey extractors and things like that. He was importing them and selling them on eBay. And he said, dude, just import some fire bricks. Give that a go. Because they're just not made in Australia. So they all the fire bricks in Australia are imported.
Okay.
No one makes fire bricks.
Okay.
Sadly, it's sad. And so I wish we made fire bricks, but we don't have 10 acres of fire clay mine. And
Yep, sure. It's just not practical. It's not going to happen.
It's not practical, unfortunately.
So this is still just for your 100 bricks, for your own...
This is for my 100. Well, yes and no. At that point, I'd started getting to the point where I'm like, there's not enough of these in the country. Like, there's not a good supplier of these. I might try and bring some in. So I imported a pallet of fire bricks. I learned some very painful lessons about local port charges.
Oh, really?
Oh, my goodness.
Local port charges in Melbourne.
If you've ever imported something, the material itself, you might get a little pallet of something in, say, from Thailand, and say $200, it's delivered all the way to the Port of Melbourne, and you've got a pallet of bricks, let's say, for argument's sake, $200. Then by the time you leave the dock, you've paid another $800.
Oh my gosh!
Anyway, that's the whole thing.
Bonus contention.
It's just how it is.
Yeah, okay.
So anyway, also you probably shouldn't put 1.6 tons in the back of a highlight.
No,
that's another story, and that definitely didn't happen.
All the way down the M3, is it?
Jeez.
Oh my god! Anyway,
so I got this pallet of bricks home, put them in the garage, and I was going to build the oven with them. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to put these on eBay. I'll just list one on eBay and just, see what happens. See if them. They all sold in like 5 days.
Really?
The whole pallet was gone.
Really?
And I went, okay.
Oh, there's something here.
Here's a bit of, this could be a possibility. So then as an engineer, we love spreadsheets. Right? So I made a spreadsheet and I started figuring out, all right, how many bricks will we need to bring in? What are the costs? Like we need a warehouse, etc. So anyway, I ended up bringing the materials, and I brought in all the materials that I needed to build my own oven. And so the initial idea for the business was, we called it the Melbourne Fire Brick Company. And the idea was to sell fire bricks in Melbourne. That's why it's called the Melbourne Fire Brick Company.
Oh, there you go. I was wondering.
It's a name made for search engine optimization.
Yeah, well done. You did very well there.
So we wanted to, when you Googled Fire Bricks Melbourne, you found us, right? And so
that's
you
very
track us
clever.
down.
That's
And look, honestly, that's what we did for the first nearly 2 years. Was we sold raw materials to people wanting to build wood fire ovens.
And is this while you were still a civil engineer working at?
Yes.
Was it Fulton Hogan?
So I started with Fulton Hogan. By that stage, by the stage of starting the wood-fired oven adventure, I was with Abbey Group, which is now Lend-Lease.
Okay.
I got bought out by Lend-Lease.
And what do they do?
So they do big projects.
Okay.
So freeways.
Okay.
Think freeways, think massive bridges. Yep. So the project that I was on with Abbey Group, so when I started the business, I was working for Abbey Group. I'd been a civil engineer at that stage maybe for 5 years, I think, something like that, 4 or 5 years. And I was on the Peninsula Link Freeway project. Right. So it's I think a 20-kilometre freeway with 27 bridges or something. It was a cool project.
Yeah.
And so I was working as a site engineer there. And so a site engineer is someone who goes out on site, gets all muddy, looks at the work that people are doing and says, that's good, that's no good. I can't sign this off. You have to. So I would be checking things before they were poured, let's say, in concrete.
Quality control, Ben.
Effectively, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was working full-time as an engineer, and on my weeknights and my weekends, I was trying to sell fire bricks and trying to build up this little business.
Yeah, right.
But so I've gotten the order a little bit mixed up, but basically I got my first container of bricks came, and I started selling those. But in the background, I'm building my oven at home.
Yeah.
Because I've got all this materials now, and I built the oven, and I had a brilliant time. It was awesome.
Good fun.
It was great fun. Like I even bought a brick saw. I bought it I got on Gumtree. I bought a secondhand brick saw. You're going to hear a lot about Gumtree
and a few other little online outfits.
There's a few other auction sites that I'm partial to that you'll hear about.
We might talk about that on the next episode.
So I bought this brick saw because I was like, well, if I rent one, they're like $120 a day.
Yeah,
I'm going to need this for weeks. So I bought one thinking I'll sell it at the end. I buy the brick saw and I start cutting bricks and making this oven, and I honestly had a terrific time. I have done lots of hands-on projects.
Yeah.
I think that's why like it's who I am.
Yeah.
Is I love projects involved in making stuff. I just like making stuff.
that's
I don't
great.
really mind what the stuff is.
Yeah.
I just love.
But you're
making
real
stuff.
creative like that, aren't you?
I'm not artistic.
Yeah.
So I'm not like musically creative.
Yeah.
But I am.
Hang on, you were singing before.
Yeah, but
When
we
I was
didn't
sitting
record
on the
that.
mics-
We didn't record that.
No, you didn't. But
No,
you,
no, they have no record of that. You don't.
But I heard it.
I'm not artistic.
You don't know. I wasn't.
I love making things.
Yeah.
I love making things with my hands. And so I've done car restorations. I've done all kinds of other sort of hands-on projects before. But building the oven was something different.
Yeah,
It was
neat.
brilliant.
Oh.
Because one of the things with it is it's very forgiving. So if you lay a brick wrong, take it off, lay it again, just scrape the mortar off it and try again. It's not like permanent. You can fix your mistakes, which is something that I love about it. But I don't know, there's something, I remember pulling out my very first bit of formwork. I made my arch. And so the opening to the ovens, it was a semicircular arch back then. And I remember so clearly like pulling that formwork out and the whole thing stayed there.
Yeah.
It stayed there.
Yeah.
Engineering wise, I know it's going to stay there. It's in pure compression. It's not going anywhere. But it's one thing to know it in the back of your head, but to actually feel it and see it. I think I would call it like a mug of tea moment.
Okay.
Something, or like it's just this moment where you sit back with a cup of tea and you admire your work.
That's really cool.
And the project had just so many of those moments.
That's really
where you
nice.
get a cup of tea or a beer or whatever,
Yeah.
and you sit back and just go, oh, that's satisfying.
That's awesome. That's
really
great.
sad. Like even just laying a row of bricks for the dome, clean them all up and see how neatly they're laid. I had built a very, very rustic Trammel tool at that point. It was made of, I don't know, there's wood and like there was a F clamp in there. It was a mess. It worked. Anyway.
Well, the Trammel tools that you now put in the kits are amazing. So I've got the D105 from you and that Trammel tool, amazing. Easy to use, easy to do. It was a lot of fun.
The Trammel tool is still my favorite. Like in terms of component of the ovens, that's my favorite thing.
It's great.
It works.
Yeah.
And it's super satisfying.
Yeah,
so I built this oven and the satisfaction of building it was just brilliant. I loved it. And I thought to myself at that point, this is great fun, but geez, it's hard work. Like cutting all the bricks. Man, I was cutting bricks until 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, man. Your neighbours would have loved you.
Yeah,
not really.
No, well, my neighbour was building a brick oven at the same time.
that's
So there was some, but I'm pretty sure there were several other neighbours who may not have appreciated it.
It'd be a diamond saw, wouldn't it?
Well,
Pretty
yeah,
noisy.
diamond saw, yeah, but they're incredibly loud.
Yeah.
Like if you've ever cut bricks before, it's one of the highest pitched sounds that you can make.
Yep.
And there's dust and slurry and it's just a mess.
Yep.
And it's time consuming.
Yep.
And so I built this oven. I cut all the bricks myself and I loved it, but I thought this is a very limited market. The number of people who, if you took look at the whole population and say, all right, out of that population, who wants to build a brick oven? And maybe here's Mark. All right, we got one. Awesome. But you've got a percentage. Let's call it, say, 5%. And then you say, all right, out of that 5%, how many of those would have the willingness and the skill to do it all from scratch? Just go buy a bunch of bricks and cut them to size. Now you're coming down to a very small percentage. And so I thought, well, if I could make a kit where all the bricks are cut to size and all of the really hard work is done, but you still get the fun of assembling it, then I said, maybe then we'll have a product.
Yeah.
So I started working on it.
Okay.
And I started with CAD. Started with drawing everything in on the computer-aided design.
Yes. Very nice.
And I drew the whole, the D105 was our first oven, and I drew it in 3D. I modeled every brick in 3D so I could see how they interacted with each other, see how they fit together, see how tight I could get the joints.
Yeah, right.
What I was trying to figure out was, all right, let's say the dome. If we look at the dome, how many different types of brick do I need to keep the joints nice and tight without having a brick for every single row?
Yep.
Because the bricks change as you go up.
Yes, they
the
do.
Angle, everything changes. And so through the modeling, I was able to figure out, right, I can use this number of bricks and we use them in different sequences. So, you have a type 1, a type 2, a type 3, a stagger. And, your first 4 rows are type 1s. But then your fifth row is type 1, type 2, type 1, type 2, type 1, type 2, and it keeps all the joints tight.
Yeah, right.
Anyway.
So what's the advantage of keeping these joints nice and tight? Less mortar? Is that what we're aiming for?
It's part, where it actually stems from originally was the refractory mortars are designed for 3mm joints max.
Mm.
Right? That's where normal refractory mortars are designed for very, very tight joints. And part of the idea of that was if the mortar deteriorated over a long period of time, let's say 20 years, the mortar is trapped in a wedge and it doesn't have a big opening on the face for the mortar to fall out.
Right.
And so that was that's why like the ovens in Pompeii.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
Which I think you visited.
Oh, I have. Have you been there yourself?
No, I haven't.
No, you
No.
must. Oh,
Okay.
I mean, they're gorgeous.
Yeah,
They're just
yeah.
very special.
Well, and they're still standing because they would have put that effort into tight joints.
Yeah,
So
sure.
that, over that period of time, if the mortar deteriorated, which the mortar that they would have had probably has, they're still held together because everything's so tight. What we've done, this is interesting. I haven't really talked about this with many people, but we don't need to do tight joints anymore. The mortar that I've developed, it took me 12 months of testing to create a refractory mortar that we can have in a 75mm wide joint.
Really?
3-inch. Yeah, we could do a 3-inch.
That's
joint.
huge.
It's massive.
Wow.
So we don't actually have to do tight joints anymore, but they're pretty.
They look great.
They look really nice.
Oh, they
and there's
do.
something.
Wow, that's amazing.
There's something, it's attractive
Yeah.
when you look inside of them. Joints are all nice and tight. The other thing though is if you're, a lot of your listeners may not have laid brick. And I'd never laid bricks
I hadn't
before
laid brick
started,
before.
right?
No, first time.
If you're trying to lay bricks with a mortar bed, so let's say you're after like a 3/8 or 10mm bed, it's actually quite hard because the brick it's soft. You've got to get the consistency of the mortar perfect. The brick wants to move around on you. If you're laying the bricks such that it's brick on brick, well, you can't get it wrong. And that's why I love the trammel. You put a brick in the trammel, you bring it down and you rub until you hear it rubbing on the brick
Against the
underneath
brick.
it.
Yeah, that's right.
And then
You're done.
It's done. But the thing is, if you do that constantly, you stay level all the way up. You don't start wandering and getting a bit off on the it actually, so there's a practical element to it. So in answer to your question, why keep the joints tight? Back in the day, you had to.
Yeah.
With the mortar that we have now, we don't have to, but we do it because it actually makes it easier to
Aesthetically, it looks
build.
lovely.
And it's so pretty.
It is pretty. I love standing out the front of my oven with the fire raging, glowing up the back of the brick. I love refractory brick. They're just gorgeous. And the bricks that you use, they are gorgeous. The colours bouncing with the flames, it's just lovely. But the joints, the lines they are just so delightful to look at.
It's something I think that again, it comes back to that satisfaction thing. And it's ongoing. Like, there's a satisfaction in building it, but then you sitting in front of your oven years later and you're looking inside at your brickwork and how neat it is.
I know. It's great.
Just lovely.
It is great. Not all of your ovens are brick though.
Correct.
And you have told me that you had experience in your days as a civil engineer in these precast yards. Is that right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so this is an interesting one. I was working for Abbey Group and I was on the Mornington Peninsula Freeway project. My job was I was given the position of precast engineer.
Yep.
So there's about $23 million worth of precast concrete being made for the project. So there's a lot. And think about like super T-beams. So if you drive under a bridge and you look up, you'll see these beams. And that's what the bridge is made up of, is these heavily reinforced concrete beams. But bridge barriers, piles, anything to do with precast concrete, that was my responsibility. I had to make sure that it was being done on time and then it was being done properly. So I had to go and do all the QA checking and everything. And so I spent a huge amount of time in this precast yard in Melton, which is sort of west of Melbourne. It's a solid drive. From where I lived, I think it was about an hour and a half drive or something. But I was spending lots of time, rather than spending time on site, where all my friends were. So the guys that I was working with, they were on site, man. They were doing the bridges. Their responsibility.
Were they doing the cool stuff?
They were doing what I considered the cool stuff, right? And I remember thinking, man, they're getting to do this cool work, which is obviously going to help their career. You could see that the experience that they got is a 3 or 4 year project, and they were going to go from site engineer to project engineer or PE up to project management or whatever. But me in the precast role, I was just thinking, man, this doesn't really have a great impact on my resume as a civil engineer, which is sort of this career I found myself in. And I was a bit down about it, if I'm honest. So I remember being at this dusty precast yard out in Melton and just thinking, what am I doing here? Like, how does this how is this helping me in the long run? How is this experience? What is this experience actually going to do for me in the long run? Like, I'm wasting my time here. Like all my friends they're moving forward. They're climbing the civil engineering ladder, and here's me, staring at precast concrete get poured. What I wasn't aware of, and what I am so grateful for now, is that I was getting this 3-year experience, this teaching in how to precast concrete. And you say, well, why? Like, who cares? Like, great, you know about precast concrete. Well, refractory castable is concrete. It's a different form of concrete. So refractory castable is basically, think of it as high temperature concrete. It's funny when I say that. I don't think it's like red hot concrete, like glowing, and we pour it like glowing orange. It's normal looking sort of concrete, but it can handle temperatures up to like the material we use goes to 1,300 degrees Celsius.
Wow, that's hot.
So it's a bit over engineered.
Wow, it is a bit, isn't it?
Yeah. So anyway, I remember, I was out on this yard and just thinking, what am I doing? What I didn't know was I was just getting all the groundwork for setting up my own precast yard, which is something that I'm going to be showing you.
Yeah.
And because the fire bricks are fantastic, but if you're trying to make an entire oven using only fire brick, it's very limiting. They are already, pre-made shapes, if you want to say that. And if you're trying to make, say, a flue gathering, I call it a flue gallery, but if you're trying to make a weird shape out of brick, man, you better.
It's very difficult.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Whereas refractory concrete, you can make into any shape you want. You just have to be able to make the mold.
Yeah, right.
And then you need to know what to do. So you need to be able to vibrate your castable, your concrete. If you vibrate that, then you'll get all the voids out of it. It will fill the mold completely. So you can have a really complex mold. And you're pouring in this quite thick concrete, this castable. It's not runny. It's not like soup. You don't want it to be like a soup because then it's very weak. You want it to be this really stiff porridge, let's say.
Yeah, right.
And then in order to get that to flow through the mold, well, you've got to vibrate it. And that was one like small thing that I learned, like how to make a shaker table.
Yep.
But then all of the other things, like the processes of pouring, stripping, cleaning, reset, pour, strip, clean, like being able to setting up gantry cranes, setting up all of these things. Like I got this amazing experience from something that at the time I was ungrateful for.
Yeah, isn't it amazing though? You wouldn't have picked it.
Wouldn't have picked it. If you'd given me the option of like, oh, Ben, we'll chuck you on that bridge instead, I would have said, yeah, awesome.
Go for it.
I was not given that option despite asking. And I'm glad. I'm honestly glad that happened.
So that forms a very interesting link from your engineering aerospace days to why we're sitting in a series of 7 factories here. I'm looking forward to the factory tour. I'm sure there's a lot to talk about with that as well.
There is.
Okay. Discuss briefly how the business has changed since 2011, when it was probably just yourself.
Yep.
And today, well, I've already met quite a few of your lovely staff here.
Yes.
So tell the listeners how it's changed.
Sure.
Because you're no longer a tiny, small one-man band, are you?
Yeah, and I was for ages though. Like, so for the first, so I'll try and do a quick history, if you'll indulge me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I started off working full-time at Abbey Group, and I've got fire bricks and refractory insulation and so on, and I'm selling that to people on my weekends and after work, so they could build their oven at home. And I did that for about 2 straight years. The Peninsula Link Freeway project was still going, and so I worked on that until it finished. And in the meantime, I'm building the business in the background, because if I just dropped work and jumped into this business, sure, lots of time to try and get the business going.
It's a big risk.
Well, I didn't have the money.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have this huge bank balance that I'm like, sweet, I don't have to work for a year or two. I can just indulge this passion for this business. So instead, I worked full time as an engineer, and I did everything I could on the business. So I was, I'd come home from work and I'd work on the website, and I'd work on like the design of the oven, and eventually get some sleep. And I would say I worked very hard.
Yeah.
For those.
You must have lived on a lot of coffee.
There was a fair bit of coffee.
Yeah,
But so then after 2 years, so the project finished up, and I was like, awesome. Like the timing of it was actually really good. I was like, sweet, I can go full time doing the business. And at that stage was still predominantly selling the raw materials. and I got a call from the precast yard that I'd been monitoring. They were looking for a project manager for 6 months to fill in for them. I had a great time working there for 6 months, and that sort of helped me not have to rely on the business for my income.
Nice.
Which just hobbles it because you have no cash flow to reinvest into, say, equipment or more material. I swear, for the first 4 years, I would get fire bricks in and I'd sell them, and I'd run out. And I'd have the next order. I'd just get the money for the next order sort of towards the end of that. And I'd get the next order on the way, but I'd have run out. And I'd be saying to people, it's coming like just in a month, and I remember just thinking, one day I'll actually have stock here, that'll be really good. And so after about 2.5 years, it was going pretty well. And my dad said, look, like he'd been sort of watching on and coaching me and helping me with. I owe him so much.
Oh, bless him.
He's a legend, and he would do all our accounts and everything. He said, "Look, I think things are going reasonably well. I'll give you a bit of a loan, and let's get a bunch of bricks in because I can see you're just running out." Yeah. So we did that, and amazing. Like that was just an absolute blessing. So got those in and finally had stock, and then we started developing that oven kit and really focusing on
the D105.
The D105. And that was our flagship. That was our first pre-cut brick oven kit. And man, that was a process of development.
I bet it was.
I mean, I'd drawn the model, but then, the process of making, I remember, I won't give you his address or anything.
No, don't.
That was my very first, you can bleep out the name if you want. But he lived nearby, let's say. He was my very first customer.
Was he?
Oh, yeah. I clearly remember where he lives. I won't tell you. But no, I remember. He got our very first brick oven, but it was basic then. The floor tiles were cut. The calcium silica board was sort of marked out. The dome bricks were cut, and the entry arch and everything was done. The formwork was made in chipboard. This is interesting. If you look at our formwork for making those arches, it's got these lines on it on the sides. The little 3mm thick lines, and that's to show you where to put your joins. The very first one did not have that.
Okay.
And so I gave him this formwork and everything, and there were no instructions. I hadn't been able to write any instructions.
No YouTube videos.
But he didn't care. He was like, no, I've got this. Like he knew what he wanted to build. He was going to do it all himself.
Yeah.
But I said, hey, how about I'll cut all the bricks for you. I just want your feedback. Like let me know how it goes and so on. So anyway, he built his own. I remember coming out to see it, and he'd done a great job. It was a little bit lopsided. Like, I could see the vent arch, like the joints were just a bit thicker on the right than the left. And I thought, right. And that was like one of the first things I thought, there's an improvement. I need to put these lines on the formwork so that people know to keep the joints level, right? And if you don't have that on there, how do you do it? You're making it up as you go.
How did you get to the P85? Because if you started with the D105, so how long into the business was it before you started doing?
Years. It was
long
years.
time.
So it was. I think it was about 2015.
Okay.
When I started thinking about the P85, the precast oven, I'd been selling. There was another local manufacturer who was making a precast oven. It was a finished unit. It was big. It was heavy. It was well made. And I thought, well, I'll offer that. And they were quite popular. And so I could see there was a market for a smaller, like a more compact oven that heated up a bit faster. And
so why not make that out of bricks?
Well, that's the thing, is the thickness of the dome.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to make an oven with a small footprint, you need to think about wall thickness.
Yep.
All right, so let's look at the D105. You've got if you look at a cross section of the dome, so you're looking from above, and you're looking, all right, how thick is the wall of this thing? You've got 115 mil or 4.5 inches of fire brick. Then you have 50 mil of ceramic fiber blanket, and then you have 50 mil of perlite render. So you've got 215 mil of wall.
Yeah.
Right. Then you put you've got an internal space of the dome, let's say 105 centimeters. Then you've got another 215 mil of wall. All of a sudden, your oven's 1,450 mil wide. It's 1,430. Sorry, it's big on the outside, and big part of that is the wall thickness. Now, if I exaggerate and I say, well, I was able to make the wall of the oven paper thin. Well, you could have an internal diameter of 1 meter and an external diameter of 1001 millimeters.
Yes,
You know,
yes, yeah, that's right.
So the thinner you can make the wall, the more compact the oven becomes.
Okay.
However, there's obviously limitations to that. We don't want to make a paper thin wall. That would be bad. So with the precast oven, what we've done is instead of 4.5 inches or 115 mil of fire brick, we have 65 mil of refractory castable.
Okay.
But then we have the same insulation, 50 mil of ceramic fiber blanket,
Yep.
and 50 mil of render.
Right.
So we've saved 50 mil there, and we save 50 mil on the other side. And so now
So surely that must be cheaper for you to manufacture?
it's 5 times more expensive.
You're joking.
Fire bricks are really expensive.
Oh,
Okay. Let me say. So a fire brick is what's called a shaped refractory. So it's in a finished shape. So you've got a tile, let's say, that's a shaped refractory. Refractory castable is an unshaped refractory.
Okay.
You add water, you mix it up, and you can make it into any shape you want.
Okay.
You just need the mold.
Right.
Well, turns out that that's quite a high-tech material still. Even in this day and age, that's still a high-tech material. It is expensive.
Right.
Because it's versatile.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
And so the last time I did the maths on it, I found that if you said, all right, Ben, I've got this tile. It's, a foot by a foot and it's 2 inches thick. It would cost me 5 times
That's unbelievable.
the fire brick cost to
right.
make it in cast.
Okay. All right.
And that's without the labor cost. It's very expensive.
Do you ever see a point in time in this business in the future where you will do away with the bricks and just go to the castable?
No, well, because I think there's always going to be a demand for people like yourself.
Oh, I love my bricks.
You love the bricks, right?
Oh, geez.
And so we've done, for those of listening who maybe haven't sort of seen much of our material, like jump on our website. We've got lots and lots of videos and stuff.
What's your website address?
www.melbournefirebricks.com.au.
Yeah, it's a great site. Beautiful website.
The new website soon, which is coming out very soon, will be www.thefirebrickco.com/au.
Okay.
Or .com or /NZ.
Okay, and we'll leave all those links in the show notes.
So many links.
There's lots of links. You have a fabulous YouTube channel as well. And
one of the videos that's on there is this brick versus precast video. And you're
it's a
asking,
great video,
do you think there's ever going to be a time when you give away the brick and you just go all the precast? And I think it's interesting, like we look at, we're selling ovens in America, right? So we've gone from, and I've jumped forward a long way in our history now, but we went from selling them in Australia, we started selling them in America. And to date, I think we've sold somewhere around, maybe it might be 450 ovens in America. So
really?
Since we started in 2016.
Oh, that's staggering. Oh.
Yeah. So
congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's really exciting.
I bet it is.
And it's so much fun. So one of the things that people ask is, well, isn't someone over there doing it? Like, it's America. This is 300 million people. Isn't someone else making wood-fired ovens?
Yeah.
And they are, but they're actually doing exactly what you said. Not all of them, but most of them are doing exactly what you described. They're making precast ovens, but they're entirely precast. So they may have a fire brick, say, floor, but all of the dome is cast. And so it goes together. It literally slaps together.
Yeah.
I don't speak ill of competition.
Yeah.
The competition is great. But
absolutely.
those ovens, they kind of look that way. They look like they've just slapped together. And that's one of the things that I like about ours is while the dome of our oven, the precast oven, it's 4 pieces that lock together.
Yep.
You can slap it together.
Yep.
The front of the oven is all fire brick. And you've got
It's
the precast flue
beautiful.
gallery. And so when you look at the front of the oven, you see those hand-laid bricks that you lay.
Yeah.
And you haven't laid them perfectly.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
It is.
That's part of it.
Absolutely okay.
Yeah. And so to answer your question, will we do away with bricks? No, because there will always be a demand for that authenticity.
Yeah.
And so, okay, maybe we'll make lots of our precast ovens, but even the brick ovens where they're all brick, so many people want to build something that's really authentic. And there's nothing more authentic, like in terms of cooking, than a brick oven, a whole brick oven.
Oh, absolutely. And I challenge any listener out there, go to Pompeii, see the 2,000-year-old brick ovens, come back and not want a brick oven. It's you're gonna change my life. Yeah. I think it was just. Yeah, I love my Roman history, but seeing that stuff still standing, imagining the thousands of people that must have been walking past that oven, buying their breads, maybe even buying other foods from these brick ovens, it's pretty special. And yeah, I think you've captured the romance in these wonderful D105s incredibly. You've done a great job with it.
It's something that, I love.
Yeah.
And it got me. It got me 100%. I'm like, I saw the fire dancing over the brick of my very first oven.
Yeah.
And
Something
I was
magical
hooked.
about
I was
it.
hooked.
Oh, absolutely.
And look, I love our precast ovens.
Yeah.
I absolutely love them. And they are actually very, very practical. They've got a quicker heat up time. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
There's some real benefits
Yeah.
to the precast oven over the brick ovens. But
And it looks amazing downstairs when I walked in, and I haven't been here before. I walked into your reception area downstairs. You've got just inside there, you've got a P85 and a D105 next door. And they both look stunning. They are, they really are quite something. And the precast, looking through into the back of it, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. It's not brick, but it is still gorgeous.
And look, this is an interesting thing. I'm an engineer. I'm super practical, right? When the fire is burning, you're looking at the fire.
Yeah.
Yes, it might be dancing over a brick, but
Come on, I look at the bricks.
I know,
I'm sorry,
like
Ben.
you're super romantic. But this is the thing, like you will be looking at that fire rolling over the surface, and hey, whether it's a smooth casting or the bricks,
it's good.
It is something to consider, and that's so in the videos that we did a video called Brick versus Precast. And we go through all the differences. Because the first thing people want to know is, well, which one should I buy?
Absolutely.
Which one's better?
Yeah.
Is one better?
And what's the answer to that?
And the answer is, well, neither is better, but one might be better for you.
Yeah.
That's I think the best way of thinking about it. So if you are looking for an oven that has a really quick heat up time, and you're wanting, you don't have 2.5 hours to wait for it to heat up, then maybe the precast oven might be better to look at.
So the D105, we'll go into deep dive on the factory tour, but the D105, give or take 2.5 hours to heat up, right?
Yep.
Your P85,
1 hour and 15 minutes.
That's quick.
And so that's really quick. In this video, I go through all the differences, right? There's like 7.
Yeah.
And you've got the difference in the heat up time, but then you also have the difference in the cool down time. Those are the big ones, I think. But then you've got the aesthetic. And what's interesting is I bring up all these points. So you've got the aesthetic of the oven. You've got the type of stand that you need to build to support it. A brick oven needs a reinforced concrete slab as the bench top. The P85 precast doesn't need that.
Right.
You've got the physical size. And what's really interesting is, like, say, if we look at the aesthetic, some people see the brick and you're one of these people.
Yes, I am.
Right? Who will say, that's it, I must have that. Whereas other people are like, no, I like that, that's really nice, but no, actually the fact that this thing heats up in 1 hour and 15 minutes, well, that's more important to me.
Absolutely.
And so it's fun, Jeremy's our sales manager, and he's more customer support, not really sales. I told him when I employed him, I said, you don't really have to do sales. People will just ring up and buy them.
Oh, they'll sell themselves.
It's not, you don't have to push them on anybody. But what I want you to do is I want you to make sure that everybody who buys one buys the right one for them. Don't try and upsell them to the bigger oven. Do not do that. That's not what we do not do that. In fact, if you ring up and try and buy the D130,
I was going to ask you, should I put a D130 in my backyard?
We will actively try and talk you out of it, right? We will firstly we'll ask,
it's a beast.
Is it for commercial purposes? And if you say no, we'll say, are you sure you need the D130? That's a monster oven. It's got a 4.5 hour heat up time.
Is it
and
really?
The problem with that is it's this big hurdle in between you and wood-fired cooking.
Yeah.
So let's exaggerate. Let's say the oven took 36 hours to heat up.
Exactly right.
And I find exaggerating is actually a terrific way of understanding things. It's 36 hours to heat up. You will use it for very big occasions.
Yes.
You'll plan it way in advance. And
once every 4 years.
Right? But you'll use it, but it'll be for the big occasions.
It will be, yeah.
So the longer the heat up time is, the shorter we can make that, the more likely you are to use it often.
Yep.
And so for us, the D105, 2.5 hours is a while, but that's still achievable. That's still manageable. Whereas like 4.5 hours,
okay.
I tell you, like, you're going to fire it up and cook that whole lamb, on Easter weekend, let's say. But when 3 friends are coming over
for some tapas or
for something, are you going to go to the effort of burning 60 kilos of firewood 4.5 hours before they get there? I'd say maybe you won't. And so for us, and what I've told Jeremy is I want to make sure that every customer gets the best oven for them. And it's because if you do, then you will love it. And if you love it, then you'll tell your friends about it. So I'm ultimately very selfish.
Well, that's okay.
No. If you end up with the right oven for you, you'll love it and you'll use it all the time.
Absolutely.
And that's the best thing for the oven, is to get used.
It is. And we'll be right back. If you're enjoying this episode, I'd like to invite you to head on over to Facebook and join my Wood-Fired Oven Chronicles Facebook group. Join hundreds and hundreds of wood-fired oven enthusiasts from all around the world as they share their favourite recipes, tips and techniques to supercharge all of our wood-fired oven cooking skills. Head on over to Instagram as well, Marks_wood-fired oven for more information on this podcast. Okay, back to the show.
Now, I haven't finished telling you the whole our history.
Okay,
do you want me to go back?
Yeah.
Okay, so what did I do? So I started making the wood-fired oven kits, and just constantly improving those, big steps in the improvement because it was so basic to start with. So after Brett Stevens' oven went out, I made some changes, and every customer would give me feedback. I'd say, just give me the feedback. I need to. How was it? Don't just tell me it was good. A lot of them they go, it was great. I'm like, I'm awesome. Like that's really good. But how could we improve?
Yeah.
We still ask for that now because I love getting the positive feedback. Don't get me wrong. I don't hate being told that they've enjoyed themselves.
Yeah.
But if someone has a suggestion for improvement, I'm all ears.
Yeah, great.
Because that's how we improve. Is customers they're giving us a perspective on it that I can't get.
Yeah.
Because I'm too close to it now.
Absolutely.
So anyway, we get all that feedback and we're continuously improving the D105 and building that. And then the idea to make a precast oven comes up and I start working on that. And I think one of the things that we were chatting about before off camera, you say, how long did it take you to develop that? I drew it in CAD. It only took me about a week to do the 3D modeling, right?
Only?
Yeah, it's fine. Like, it's relatively, and that's of my spare time. That's not like full time. There was no full time of anything. I was full time in the business. I was full time in the business then, but geez, I was up to my elbows in everything still. Yeah. Wasn't like I had everything be done for me. So anyway, in all the spare time, I drew this probably, my weeknights after work.
Yeah, that's right.
In front of the telly with the laptop.
Gosh.
So I drew the 3D model and then I started to take it from an idea on the screen into parts. How do we do that? And so I cut the model into 4mm layers, right, and spread them out. So it's called contouring.
Okay.
And so you take a 3D part and you slice it into layers and you spread the layers out on the screen and you label each one. And then I sent that off to a friend who had a CNC router and he cut those parts out of 4mm MDF.
Oh, wow.
And we laid them all up on top of each other and they had like guide holes to, it took weeks to do this. So we laid this thing up, but now you can imagine it's made out of MDF and imagine the precast oven with no insulation or anything. Imagine those parts, but they're made out of MDF and they're all stepped, 4mm steps.
Yep.
Right? Because it's 4mm thickness. It's rough. Well, so then the real work started of hand sanding and bogging. So bog is like a body filler using fiberglass in the automotive industry. So you would apply this bog, this body filler, and then let it set and then start sanding and sanding and sanding. And so like the tongue and groove joints, I think they took me like 3 weeks.
Did they?
Just to get those right. I remember hand sanding it and I remember just thinking, oh my goodness, it's so much work, but it's going to be so worth it. Yeah. It's going to be so worth it. But right now, it's a lot of work.
Oh my gosh.
And so anyway, made these, so sanded and finessed these parts and then we had them spray painted. Yep. So a friend of mine was a spray painter. So he painted them a lovely white 2-pack gloss. And then we started, so then we had the parts, but they're made out of MDF. Now you can't make a wood fired out of MDF.
Wouldn't last long.
No, I don't think so.
No.
So what we had to do was we had to take fiberglass molds off those parts and you have to nail that. You have to get it right. Is if you don't, when you in the process of taking the fiberglass parts off those, you will destroy them. They will not be the same. Okay. You can wax them as well as you want, but they are going to get damaged in the process of making fiberglass. So we fiberglassed, we basically put fiberglass over each of those parts and let it set and then pulled it off. And it's a bit of a complicated process to try to describe, but basically we made a 2-part mold. So fiberglass shell that would fully encase that part.
Yes.
We pulled the fiberglass molds off the MDF part.
Yes.
It gets so complicated.
Oh, look, I'm following.
You start talking about masters
following.
and negatives and it's just, so at this point we have our fiberglass shells. Yeah. And we have some pretty badly damaged MDF parts that we basically put in the bin straight away.
Yeah.
It's a process of like faith where you're like, please, don't damage these fiberglass molds. Because at this point we're already at like 8 months.
8 months.
It took the whole process to go from the model to having fiberglass molds that were actually ready to pour 9 months.
Wow.
It's just phenomenal.
So R&D on these things, it takes a lot of time.
So it's not, we've had people ask, could you make a bigger precast oven? And I'm like, yes, I want to do that. You're going to have to wait.
Yeah, and I can
think
see
I've got
why.
it penciled in for like 2025.
So well done.
Yeah. It's on the list, but the list is long. So anyway, we developed the P85. And hey, lots of other things happened. I started a construction business. We were building ovens at people's homes. I had a wood-fired oven trailer business.
Did you?
Yeah, I got very entrepreneurial there for a bit.
You did, didn't you?
And I learned some
I haven't seen
lessons.
any pictures of that. Is that up on your
So
gram?
you'll find some old stuff on the gram.
Oh, did you? Yeah. Okay, I'll go check that out.
And but we were building. I had 4 full-time guys building ovens at people's homes.
And do you still have those guys working for you?
Well, good question. So we did that for like 2 straight years. It was going quite well. The accountant was very happy. It was making money. It consumed all of my time. And what I hadn't realized, I thought, the path to growth for our business was to do more. We make wood-fired ovens. People seem to like them. We should build them at people's homes.
Yeah.
People keep asking.
Of course.
I don't want to build it. Could you build it for me? And I thought, maybe we should do that. So we started a construction business. And I thought, at the same time, it was right around the same time. I thought, we make wood-fired ovens. Our pizzas are pretty good. We should do catering.
As well.
We should make wood-fired pizza.
Yes.
So I built this epic wood-fired oven trailer.
Oh, did you?
And I just started. And so what I hadn't really considered was I'm spreading myself thin.
I was about to say 40 hours in your working week.
Yeah. And I had at that time, it wasn't just me. I had a bit of a team around me. But say, let's look at the construction thing. On one hand, we're making wood-fired ovens, so we've got a manufacturing business. Then you're building them on site. That is a hard landscaping business, and the two are completely different.
Yeah.
Completely different. Now, it just so happened I'd had experience in hard landscaping at Fulton Hogan, one of my previous engineering firms. They had a landscaping team, and I was part of that for like 6 months. But so I had some familiarity with it. But I was trying to run multiple businesses, and after 2 years, I was pretty tired.
Yeah, I bet you were.
And I was also realizing I did not have enough time to devote to the manufacturing side of things. And so I ended up, it was quite painful actually. It was sad. I basically dissolved that side of the construction side of the business.
Right.
And I just passed on the work. Like one of the guys in particular, I would pass him all the work, and he was doing it under his own label, if you want to say that.
Yeah.
And it was sad. I remember because I felt like I'd failed. I felt like I'd tried something and then I'd had to let it go. Best decision
for the greater good, though.
Oh my word!
And now,
because I mean, back then we were probably selling. It might have been 120 ovens a year or something like that. So we were going reasonably well.
Yeah.
But I'd thought that the path to us maybe growing the business and improving our turnover and so on was to do more stuff. To have a catering business, to do construction, maybe make some other products.
Yes.
We should do open fireplaces.
That's right.
You might have seen it in the office.
Well,
right?
Yes, we
so
did.
we're going to do, open fireplace kits, charcoal grills, fire pits, etc. And I love, like I said, I love making stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm a sucker for this.
Yeah.
I just fell right into that.
So you had to discipline yourself to push some of that stuff aside. And that must have been hard because
It was.
some of the stuff would be a passion project. Like, we're going to have this factory tour, but I did see through the door, these beautiful big rings out there, your fire rings.
Yes, there's a whole story behind those.
And we'll check in with that.
But like it was painful.
Yeah.
Because I'd poured myself into this construction business, and got these 4 guys working. They were awesome and done so much training and so much development of tools and setups for them. And then to let it go, it was really hard.
I bet.
But I tell you, best decision ever, because then it allowed us to focus, or allowed me, I should say, to focus on that part, on the manufacturing. And what I realized was the path to, say, maybe improving the sales of this particular business, or the revenue, let's say, was not selling more things. It was putting the same things in front of more people.
Yeah, right.
So it was right around then that we were starting to get a lot of inquiries from America. And so we actually set up an American company.
Yep.
So we have our own American sister company called Flamesmiths Inc. And we started sending container loads of oven kits across. And that company, which we run from Australia, was selling them to customers in America. And that, and all of a sudden we opened up this this market of
whole new world, the new world. See, you are a musician.
No,
you are a musician. You are a musician.
So we got that opportunity to start selling there, and I realized, oh, wait a second, we don't have to have 50 products. We've got these 4 amazing products here: the P85, the D95, the D105, and the D130. Very, very cool names.
I'm sure there's a story in there
somewhere.
somewhere.
Yeah. But I realized, well, we don't have to have 50 other products. Let's focus on these and let's make these as amazing. Let's make these products the best we possibly can and refine our processes of making them so that we can make them more efficiently, keeping as much manufacturing here in Australia as we can. And that's been my focus since then. That was probably around 2016. And we have focused harder and harder. So back then we were still making the grills, we were still making the fire pits.
Because I think when I was looking at buying my oven off you, which is, from the date of publishing of the podcast, about 2.5 odd years ago, I think you were still doing the charcoal grills. I was going to buy one off you, I think.
Yeah, and I've got one at home. It's awesome. You would love it.
Test it, yeah. What can I get one?
No. Well, this is the thing. I've been like, no, we've got to focus.
Yeah, it's good.
Focus, and make sure that the energy that we have, the available effort that we have, is focused on the most important things. And then once those are nailed down, and they are nailed down now, then we have the freedom to say, all right, well, maybe we want to bring on another product. Let's have a look and carefully consider what's going to be a good product that we can make here, and that people are going to love and want, and just bring that on, one at a time, rather than, I think back then, it was the only way for me to learn the lesson was to do it, was to dive in and try and do everything at the same time. And it was, it was a hard lesson to learn, but I hope that I've learned it now. Yeah. I don't want to learn it again.
No, okay.
Yeah. So that's sort of, in terms of the history, there's obviously a lot more, but that kind of brings you up to now where what we've focused on is, we're selling the ovens throughout Australia. So at the moment, we're not even selling raw materials. We don't sell.
So you've stopped doing all of that now.
So we're still the fire brick company, but we don't sell fire bricks.
No,
I know.
I wouldn't mind some of your square bricks actually for a couple of little passion projects. I've seen pellets of them actually.
Might be something at the back. Edit that bit out. We're really focused on those things.
Yeah.
We're not selling the raw materials anymore, and we're just focused on the wood-fired ovens. And the beauty of that has been, when COVID happened, we were nearly there. We still had those things, the fire pits and the grills in the background, and that was the point to say, right, we're going to stop making those because we have to focus on the wood-fired ovens, because it kind of went a bit ballistic. Yeah.
So fast forward to today, 11 years on, you've got you got 4 wood-fired oven kits.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So tell me about the P95.
So we got and the names. Oh my goodness. So it's the D95, D for dingo. Excuse me. You wouldn't be the first person.
For precast, D
they
for
rhyme as well.
Diameter.
P and D. It's
my gosh. So sorry about that.
I know. You are forgiven.
Okay. Tell me about that kit, because I'm not particularly familiar with that one.
Okay. So the D105. Why did I name it the D105? D for diameter, 105 centimeters.
Only an engineer would come up with that,
right? I was thinking, do I call it like the Leonardo or the some Italian cool
D
name?
For diameter.
I'm not Italian.
No.
I'm like 1/4 Norwegian, and I'm all over the place. And so I had no right to claim to any of those names. So I said, fine, we'll go with a nice alphanumeric system here. So the D95. 95 centimeter diameter. The P85 is actually P for precast.
Yeah.
And it's 85
Okay, so the
centimeters.
D95, that's a brick oven.
That's a brick oven. So we've got 3 brick ovens: the D95, the D105, the D130.
And the Beast.
You know the system now.
Yeah. Oh, that's very good.
And then the P85 is our precast oven.
Okay, Ben, we've got a listener question in here on SpeakPipe from Jono. Jono's in England. Let's have a listen to Jono's question.
Hi, my name is Jono from Derbyshire, England. I'm building a 1 metre internal diameter oven and would like to ask for thoughts on the optimum depth for the underfloor insulation and the floor tiles for retained heat cooking, And does tapering the dome bricks improve the performance of the oven?
Well, that's some pretty techy questions there.
It's good. I like
I'm
them.
talking to the right guy here.
Oh, I love the detail. I love
That's
the
great.
technical stuff.
Yeah, good stuff,
Okay,
Jono. Thanks, Jono.
So thank you, Jono. Excellent question. So for a 1 meter oven, that is quite big. And the closest thing we would have to that would be, I'd say let's look at the D105.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the thickness of your insulation materials, it will depend on the insulation you have available. And we look at the underfloor insulation. And man, we could do a whole separate podcast on underfloor insulation.
I will come back.
So what we use for the underfloor insulation, we use what's called calcium silicate board, and it was short for calcil board. The board that we use is 50 mil thick, and the reason for that, the reason we use 50 mil board is, if we say we use 25 mil board, it's amazing insulation material, but 25 mil board, I would still get temperatures probably over 150 degrees coming through the bottom of that. So if you consider, let's say your oven's running at 450 degrees Celsius, the floor temperature directly under the fire, man, those tiles will be glowing orange.
Yeah.
They could be well over 700 degrees. I've actually smelted aluminium in my oven. Anyway, sorry, Jono. We're focusing on you, Jono. This is about you.
Here's another side story, isn't it?
So anyway, if you can get your hands on calcium silicate board, 50 mil is going to be perfect, right? Now, you could go thicker, but you don't need to.
Okay.
And this is important. Like, as an engineer, what I am trying to do is make sure that I design things that work really well, but the tendency of engineers is to over-engineer.
Overcook
things,
it.
Right? Yeah. And the problem with that is, well, you can make things super expensive.
Yeah, right.
There's one problem. And so we could say, oh, well, you need 2 layers of you need 100 mil of calcil board, but that wouldn't be necessary.
You don't need it.
We do that actually in our commercial oven, the D130. We put 2 layers of calcil board under that, so 100 mil. The only reason for that is they run their ovens all day, every day. And for them, fuel is a huge factor. It's their cost.
Yep.
So if we can insulate the oven even a tiny bit better, even if it's only a 10% improvement, then we do it, because then they're going to make that saving in terms of fuel. So, Jono, in terms of your subfloor insulation, I would be using calcium silicate board. I would be going with 50 mil thick. In terms of the thickness of the floor bricks, if you're after retained heat cooking, I would be looking for about that 75 mil of total material, dense material. Now, that can be made up in a couple of ways. So if we look at the D105, and Jono, what I would, if I wasn't on the podcast, I'd say, hey, Jono, check out our instructions for the D105 and just copy the heck out of it.
Oh, look at that.
Right?
You've heard it now, right from Ben.
No, I get these comments actually all the time from like YouTubers, like someone in South Africa. I built my oven. I followed all your instructions and I built my own. We don't sell them in South Africa. Good for you. Awesome. So anyway, Jono, so I would say 50 mil calcil board under the oven. It's going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And then your floor, you could have a 50 mil fire brick tile, let's say, as your cooking surface. And what we do is we pour a 25 mil layer of refractory castable that sits underneath that, right? But you could just go straight to 75 mil or 3-inch bricks.
Okay, right.
And in terms of making a floor, so if you're doing this all from scratch, and Jono, I know you are, I would be finding a standard fire brick is 230 by 115 by 75 mil, and I would be laying them in a herringbone pattern.
Yep.
And that's going to give you a 75 mil of thermal mass for your floor sitting on top of your 50 mil calcium silicate board. That will be heaps.
Okay.
You'll be able to do like a lot of baking out of that.
Awesome.
Now, if you went thicker, the problem, and we dig right into that, another question would be, well, how thick should Jono make the wall?
Yeah.
Now, I naturally lean towards a half brick. If you look at most brick walls, they're half a brick thick. They're not 230 mil thick.
No, they're half.
They're 115.
Yeah.
You know, and so we sort of, I think sometimes we approach things just with what have we seen before, and then I'll just apply that to what I'm doing here. I had a customer years ago. He was doing a pizza oven restaurant, and he built I think it was 180 centimeter internal diameter oven, and he bought enough bricks so that he could lay them with the small end facing in.
Oh wow!
The wall was 230 mil of brick, and he thought, and I told him not to.
Yeah,
not nicely. I wasn't a jerk, but I was like, John, I don't think you should do that, man. Like, you're creating a huge amount of thermal mass, It's going to take a phenomenal size fire to heat it up, but then you're also going to need a massive fire to keep it hot.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Just because you've heated something up doesn't mean it stays hot. We're not dealing with a perfect situation where there's no heat loss. You're losing heat through the insulation, through the dome. It's escaping. It's slow, but it's still escaping. So you have to keep that mass hot.
Yeah.
And that's going to take a lot of fuel. And sure enough, I think it was about 3 years later, he the restaurant was going great. I went and had pizza that was fantastic.
Fantastic.
And he called and he was building another restaurant. And he was building another oven, and he wanted to buy bricks. He said, "Yeah, this time, I'm just going to go with half a brick thick," because he said the amount of firewood that oven would go through was just phenomenal.
Enormous. Yeah, right. Okay.
Because of how thick the wall was.
Now, Jono talked about the tapering of the dome bricks as well,
Yes.
and is that important to do in terms of that heat retention properties?
That's a really good question as well. Like, do you need to have really tight joints in order to retain heat? And we talked before about why we have tight joints now, and I probably didn't cover it from a heat retention perspective. But if you look at the mortar that goes in between the joints, it actually has a fairly similar thermal conductivity to the brick. It's not going to be as good, but it's not that far off. So it's not like we're filling the gaps in between the brick with copper,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Something super conductive that's going to pass heat straight through
Yep.
it. We're using very similar cementitious materials.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to lose heat through mortar joints. Let me say that. Where you're going to lose heat is if you cut corners on your insulation layers.
Yeah, right.
If you put 25 mil of ceramic fiber blanket over the dome and say that's enough, that's where you're going to lose heat.
All right.
But you're not going to lose heat through your mortar joints. So you don't have to cut your bricks into tapers for that reason. Yep. But the reason that Jono's going to want to cut his bricks tapered is to keep his joints tight, because the refractory mortars that he will have available to him will be limited to very tight joints.
Very small joints.
Very small
couple of
joints.
mil are we talking about? Probably
About 3 mil.
3 mil. It's not much.
The mortar that he will have available to him to buy locally will most likely be that air set mortar, which is designed for use in kilns and forges, and that has to be very tight.
Very, very thin.
So all the bricks are almost buttered with it, Whereas the mortar that we use to make the build relatively easy, we've developed this ridiculous mortar that you can actually have quite a thick joint with. So.
Well, great question, Jono. Thank you for sending that in. Okay, we've got another question here from Carlo, and I'll just fire this question up for you, Ben.
Hi, my name is Carlo. My question for Ben is about the addition of a spark arrestor to the coil on the chimney. When listening to Clive on his podcast, Clive had a spark arrestor added as an extra safety device, which I thought made a lot of sense. I noticed that Ben didn't have one on the cowl from the maintaining safety clearances to your wood-fired oven video. Would Ben consider a fire arrestor to be a useful safety addition to any oven?
So that's a great question, actually. I've had somebody else text me on Instagram after listening to that episode and asked a similar question. I thought, well, here we are. I'll pose it to you. I don't have a spark arrestor on my D105, or at least I'm pretty sure I don't. You don't include one in the kit?
We don't include one in the kit. It's so good.
Carlo,
terrific question.
Good question.
And thank you also. He mentioned the video that we did of the importance of safety clearances.
Yeah. Oh, super important.
There's a video. So we did. If you're listening, you haven't watched this video, check it out, because it's not long. Unlike most of our other videos, it's pretty short, but it'll show you very graphically the importance of maintaining safety clearances, specifically to your flue.
That's when you were chucking all that cardboard in the oven, right?
Take a hot oven.
Oh,
You've been cooking pizza
Amazing.
in it all night. It's 400 degrees. There's a bit of a fire going, but it's not massive. And then maybe you're with a friend and he's just maybe had some outdoor furniture delivered that day and unpacked it, and there's all this cardboard around. And you look at the cardboard and you say, we're not very environmentally conscious at this very moment. Let's see what happens if we stuff a whole bunch of cardboard in the oven.
Oh, sounds like fun, though.
I can't advise that you do this. Please don't do this at home.
You did it on film.
Yeah, I did it on film, and I told them not to do it at home. Like, what will happen is the cardboard vaporizes, basically.
Yeah.
Almost becomes a gas. There's not enough oxygen in the oven to burn all the gas. So the gas roars out the mouth of the oven and up the chimney, and it mixes with fresh air that's being drawn up the chimney from the mouth of the oven,
Okay.
and it burns inside the chimney. Now, if you watch that video, what you'll actually see is the chimney glow red and flames shoot out the top.
Yeah, it looked amazing.
There is no spark arrestor on the market that would actually prevent flames coming out of your flue. It's not going to stop. I'm not saying that spark arrestors are useless. Please don't get me wrong. But in terms of if you were to do a fire like that, you're going to have fire coming out of your flue.
Irrespective of whether you had an arrestor or not.
So anyway, that's not normal use of your oven. That's what the teenage boys will do. Or the 39-year-olds. Anyway, anyway.
Wants to put it on film.
So sorry, Scarlett, to come back to your question.
Normal cooking environments, because some wood will spit a lot and we'll see a lot of spark. I've seen the odd little thing float up there and then it disappears.
What you often see actually floating out, if you do see like a spark coming out of your flue, often it might be creosote that's inside the flue that's lit.
Okay.
And it burns and it flakes off and little flakes come up. And what is it? Firstly, what's a spark arrestor? So it's in the sense of a chimney for a wood-fired oven or like a combustion stove, something like that. A spark arrestor is literally some mesh that's put at the very top of the flue that all of the gas, all of the smoke has to go through.
Yep.
And the idea of the mesh is that it will, the spark, which will be a floating ember, like just a tiny little bit of something that's still burning, will hit a piece of the mesh and it will knock the heat out of it, right? And basically take all the heat out of that spark, so it arrests the spark.
Okay.
I contacted our flue company years ago because someone in Adelaide, in Adelaide you actually have to have a spark arrestor.
Do you?
In certain areas, the bushfire reasons and whatnot. And I said, well, can you sell me spark arrestors? Like people keep asking for them. Like, let's sell them. Yeah. And what they said was perfect. They said, look, we don't sell them. And the reason being, we cannot guarantee that it will arrest every spark.
Okay.
And if there is a fire and we've provided you this spark arrestor, we're now liable.
Is that right?
You can sue us.
Really?
Because, hey, we've provided you a spark arrestor, inverted commas. It's meant to arrest all the sparks, right? Well, spark arrestors they'll definitely reduce the amount of sparks you're getting out of your chimney. Absolutely. And so if you're in a bushfire prone area, hey, get some stainless steel mesh and fit it inside your flue. And you can look, if you look up online, there's some guidelines on like the gauge of the mesh you need and the size of the gap in the mesh.
Doesn't strike me as a particularly difficult task to make yourself if you had to do it.
It's not in terms of why if we come back to sort of the core of the question, well, why would you have one? And that is, well, you live in an area that's maybe bushfire prone, let's say. That's a good reason to have a spark arrestor. Honestly, if you live in an area that's bushfire prone, you won't be allowed to fire your oven on a day that would actually be a problem.
That's correct.
So in terms of why we don't have them, that's one of the big reasons is we haven't found them to be strictly necessary, and there is an issue there, like liability-wise. So, but by all means, if that's something that you want to put in, it won't affect the performance of your oven in a negative way at all. But it's just about finding that right. It's got to be stainless steel mesh, because if it's mild steel, you'll just rust it out.
Yeah, sure.
Months.
Okay.
So stainless steel mesh, and just research the mesh size that you need.
Okay, there you go, Carlo. Thank you very much for sending that question through SpeakPipe. Here's another question in from one of the listeners of the podcast. He asks, is there a reason the Melbourne Fire Brick Company has never created a precision-cut keystone brick template for the P85? A refractory cork, he says, to drop into place.
Excellent question. And look, this applies equally to all of our ovens. So if you look at all of our ovens, brick or precast, they all have this hole at the top of the dome. It almost looks like where you're going to stick your flue.
Yeah.
Don't stick your flue there. But there's this void at the top of each of our ovens before you pour what we call the keystone that seals the dome. The reason that we don't make it for you, because we could make a rad like cork shape mold, and we could cast them, and that would actually be probably the easiest shape that we have in terms of casting.
Really?
The thing is, it would be dead easy. The mold would be very simple. If you compare it to the complexity of some of the other shapes that we have, a simple cork shape, dead
piece
easy.
of cake.
Problem is that everybody's oven ends up slightly different. So let's look at the brick ovens. As you lay your rows of bricks, I think in the D105 we get up to row 11, and then you pour your keystone. If you
put bricks right around the top of mine.
You can go brick all the way to the top.
Yeah,
and we say that in the instructions. There's spare bricks in the kit.
Yeah,
so
right.
in the let's look at the D105. It's my baby.
That's my baby too.
And your baby.
Yeah, I love
Okay,
it.
it's our baby. So anyway.
Stand by the corner.
We're going off track. But if you look at the keystone, so you can go all the way to the top of our brick ovens with brick. There is brick there. Yep. However, the refractory castable is going to make the perfect keystone because it will fill your keystone void completely.
Yes.
You mix it up as a wet sort of sticky porridge mix, and you pour it in, vibrate it sort of with a trowel. Yep. You rod it in, and it fills that void completely and perfectly. And that's important because the structure, a dome structure, without the keystone, you don't have the strength that you would otherwise have. You need that keystone to have almost perfect surface contact with the ring of bricks that it's against.
Yep.
Because then all the compressive force of the oven is perfectly transferred through the structure. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Right. Now, here's the thing. As you're laying your bricks for your D105, if you put in 0.5 millimeter of additional mortar in between each row of bricks as you go up, let's say 1 millimeter, it'll be easy to count it. By the time you get to the top, your keystone will be 11 mil smaller than mine if I lay mine without.
Oh, yeah. Never thought of that.
So that's the reason is
That's
we want to
interesting.
make sure that everyone's oven works.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So if we give you this precast keystone that you could drop in, if you don't lay your bricks, perfectly, it won't fit.
It won't fit.
Whereas
Good
if you
thinking,
mix it up-
engineer.
well,
Well
thank
done.
you.
You've thought of
but
everything.
it's also
Yeah.
like in the brick ovens, you're already building on a fiberglass dome by that stage anyway.
Yeah.
You've got the perfect formwork there. Hey, let's use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You do some work. I don't have to do all the casting. You do some casting. No, it is a good question. And even for the P85, you could say, well, why don't you just make those pie-shaped pieces that form the shells, if we call them? Why don't you just make those meet in the middle?
Yeah.
Well, it would have to be, again, you would have to lay them
Perfectly
perfectly
for it to sit.
There's no tolerance. And that's one of the things that I've learned practically, but you learn in engineering study is allowing tolerances for things. You don't make, if you're making a shaft and you've got to bore a hole for the shaft to go through, you do not bore the hole to the exact same size as a shaft. It's just not going to fit. If you got it to the micron, like the temperature on the day would affect whether you're able to get that shaft into that bore. So allowing tolerance is so important. And that's one of the things that we've done with the design of the oven is in every step, there's lots of tolerance.
And that's great because for the typical DIY builder like myself, never used concrete before, never laid a brick in my life before doing the D105, we are all going to build these things perfectly imperfect, aren't we?
Yeah.
And everybody's D105 is going to be different.
It's going to be different. And I think if you look at my build of the D105, if you get right up close and look at my vent arch bricks, because those are the ones that you see,
Oh, yeah.
the arch right at the front, with the flue gallery over it. If you look closely, man, the joints on the right are significantly thicker than the ones on the left, and
Better than mine.
But it's all come out when you look at it, you don't see that.
No, you don't.
You see this beautiful,
that's right.
hand built structure that you've put your heart and soul into, and look, those imperfections are. You at the time is funny. We get this all the time. Customers are like, "Oh, I did this thing and it's just a little bit off." And I'm like, look, honestly, right now that's probably like eating away at you.
Yeah.
Like that brick is 0.5 mil to the right.
That's it.
But in the end, you actually probably like that because it's
Absolutely.
If it was, look, we could pre-make everything for you. We could probably pre-make the brick, have the bricks come out all mortared together already. Let's say. So you still got the brick look.
Yeah.
So we could pre-do that. We could pre-mortar the entire vent arch together.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
Ship it. We could.
But don't do that.
But
No,
don't,
it's
because
fun building it.
It takes away the fun,
Yeah.
but it also takes away your part in the process.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
there's something about you're leaving your mark on it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be perfect.
No, it doesn't.
That's the thing. We're not.
It doesn't.
I'm trying to think of something that has to be perfect. Like if let's say you're spray painting a car, you don't want imperfections in that. You really do want that paint to be glossy.
Yeah.
And no, you don't want to put your hand in it, right? That's bad.
Yeah,
I've
that
done
is
that.
bad.
Oh, no. But with a brick oven, you're building this authentic, really quite old thing that was never meant to be.
No, it wasn't.
Absolutely perfect. So anyway, you can get it pretty darn close to perfect, but you don't have to.
No, you don't. And look,
enjoy it.
one of the imperfections that happened in my oven, it got me scratching my head at the start. You know, I'm looking at in the mouth of the oven and on the inside of the back dome on the inside of the oven. After some curing fires, I probably lit up my oven too hard too soon. I got a couple of little cracks, and one little crack goes through the brick, and the other crack just seems to follow the mortar line up for a couple of rows. Yeah. And I go, oh, that's a shame. And then a month later, I'm going, oh, I actually really like that, because there'd be no other D105 out there with exactly the same signature up through that. Perfectly imperfect, and I think
perfect. I like it,
and I like it. I like getting my glass of wine, sitting out the front, watching the flames lick up, and I go, "Oh, there's that little crack." I actually really like that.
And look, as an engineer,
you know,
I wish I could make the cracks not happen.
Yeah,
but that's not actually physically possible.
No, and
brick ovens are going to develop some fine cracks, and that's part of the thermal stress relief, if you want to call it that. You're heating up this rigid masonry structure.
You are,
and it needs some kind of relief from those stresses. So it develops these tiny cracks, which just allow for that tiny bit of movement that it needs. The cracks won't get bigger, but they will be there. They won't. You could try and fill them in, but they'll probably show up again. And that is something I think it's really important for people to accept before they start. And that's actually, we've got a whole video on cracking in wood-fired ovens. It's up on our YouTube channel. So
go watch it.
Worth checking that out, because then when you go into it and you do get that crack, you don't freak out.
No, of course.
Because it is part of what happens.
It is. And it's not going to affect the heat retention or the cooking properties, whatever.
But that's a common thing. We could do a whole thing on like myth busting.
Oh, myth busting.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be great.
Well, we had a customer recently who inquired, and they said, "Look, my oven's cooling down really quickly. I think it might be because there's this crack here." And so it's one of those things where you have a problem and you look at the thing that's got the problem and you're looking for something wrong. And if you see a crack, you're like, well, that's something wrong. Maybe that's causing the problem I'm experiencing. That's how I fix any machine. I like open it up. And I'm like, is there something on fire? Is there something that looks burned? Is there something that looks broken? And so it's not surprising that people will ask that. They say, oh, I've got a crack. I think I'm maybe losing heat through this crack. And that's not how the heat in the oven works. The heat is in the bricks. It's not a liquid that's leaking out, or even a gas that's like leaking out. And in that case, and in every time we get that inquiry, it's the oven is holding water.
Yes.
Every single time. And this is something that's probably worth talking about, is these ovens are, if you look at them, most of the photos that we have, they're built outdoors. And it's the right place to put it.
Oh, heck yeah.
Look, in the showroom there, we've got an oven inside.
You got a roof over your oven.
It's
I don't
nice.
have a roof. I get to look at the stars.
Yeah, and the rain. Well, see, you're in sunny Queensland.
No. Come on, I've just had 3 months of solid rain. We're lucky for our house not to go into water.
That's true.
Another story. But it is. I have to be honest, though. Like over December, January, February time in Brizzy, for me as a Kiwi, it's a little hot for me to stand in front of my oven. So I don't tend to use it over those 3 months.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
I'm right now in my wood-fired oven 8-month period where I'm going to be using it all the time.
It is. Standing on a 35-degree day in front of a 500-degree oven.
But you're in Melbourne. I mean, it's on the tarmac. I get down to 2 degrees sometimes when I come in for work, and it gets cold here, Ben.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed. Having been here for 39 years.
It's freaking cold.
It does. It does. I love it, though. I like to see.
Reminds me of Wellington. I grew up in Wellington.
I don't like the rain.
And it's raining and it's windy and it's...
Give me the cold. Give me dry cold.
Really?
Yeah.
You
put
like that?
on another layer and then get your work done.
No.
Work hard.
I wear this T-shirt in wintertime back home. Anyway.
No, so
where were we?
We're talking about like building ovens outdoors.
And moisture and
dealing with moisture. And so we actually just filmed a video on Saturday, like a couple of days ago. And the idea of the video is to try and help people understand where they should build their oven and all the considerations that come into that.
Great.
Now, I won't give all that away.
No, don't.
But we talk about like
bit of a spoiler.
Prevailing wind direction.
Yeah, good.
The physical size of the oven, how much room you might need to allow for like peels, so you don't poke people in the face as they walk past. Things like where your flue is going to end up. Is there something overhead, that you need to think about? Or what are your local council regulations? Does your council or authority have some? God forbid you have a homeowners authority in America. Anyway,
really?
but
not in Brisbane.
But the really big one is thinking about the weather and how does the weather affect the oven, particularly over the long term. Now, and that's what I'll talk about now, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I think this is something that I really want everybody who has a wood-fired oven or is thinking of building one, particularly the people who are thinking of building one, to really think about and just understand. Because I think once you understand something and you know it, then you have options. And you can say, well, I know about that, but I'm still going to build it this way because of these other factors. So if we look at our wood-fired oven specifically, you'll see we've got that lovely fire brick front and the floor is made of fire brick as well. And then you have the dome behind that. Now we seal that with that roll-on acrylic membrane coating.
Yep.
So we seal the dome. So the oven let's say the oven's sitting out in the weather.
Yeah.
The dome is not going to absorb water. The water just runs off that coating beautifully.
Sure does.
Right? And you would have seen it.
It's great.
And it comes down and it ponds on your stand, and your stand's covered in puddles. And we've got a water barrier system that is kind of hard to describe over the interwebs here. But basically, that prevents any water getting under your render and into your oven. It's basically a little wall that goes around the perimeter of your floor and stops water leaching in
coming back in.
Okay. And then you think, all right, well, so we're not getting water coming in through the dome and it's not getting in under the render, under the perimeter. But the mouth of the oven is made of fire brick. And fire brick is porous. It has to be. It has to be. Fire brick has to be porous for a number of reasons. One is to allow it to withstand thermal shock. So we're diving deep into this one. But
go ahead, sir.
So take a glass, right, and get it freezing cold. I'm talking like negative 30 Celsius. So you get a glass and you freeze it. Whip it out and pour boiling water into it. What do you think will happen?
Smash.
It's going to shatter, right? And you just know that. Not maybe even because you've done it, but it's just you sort of know that. And so glass is a really tight crystalline atom structure, super tight. It's not porous at all. We know that. If it was porous, we'd pour water into it, water would come out the sides. So glass is non-porous. And so it's got this really tight lattice structure. And if we look at, so we know that if you get it really cold and then you get it really hot really quickly, that's called thermal shock.
Right.
And either way, from cold to hot or hot to cold, it's thermal shock either way. So you're either rapidly expanding the material or you're rapidly contracting the material. So when you pour the boiling water into the glass, you are trying to make the glass rapidly expand. Because when you heat up a material, it expands.
Yep.
Every material has what's called a coefficient of thermal expansion. So the glass is trying to expand, but because it's this tight lattice, it has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
It can't expand into any pores or anything like that. And so it is likely, not always, they've developed some pretty cool glass, but it's likely to shatter. Fire brick is porous. And so you can basically subject it to go from 0 degrees to 900 degrees in a matter of seconds. And all those little pores give the material somewhere to expand into.
Right.
And so that's part of its ability to deal with these rapid changes in temperature.
Right.
The reason being, like these materials, like fire bricks, were not actually developed for wood-fired ovens. Believe it or not.
Were they not?
No.
Well, they should have been.
They're important. I think the most important use.
they are.
They're
Probably smelters or boring things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you've got molten steel lapping up against it.
Right.
And 1 minute it's got no steel against it, and then the next minute that they turn the
lava.
tub dish over, whatever, and there's literally lava running over it. And so they have to handle these rapid changes in temperature. So fire bricks are porous. And you'll see that in the videos. We soak the bricks in water in order to lay them. And you put them in water and they fizz.
Yeah, they do.
And so now we come back to oven being built outdoors. Fire bricks are making up the mouth of the oven. Any rain that falls on the floor of the oven and some of the rain that falls on those vertical bricks that make up the vent, that's absorbed.
Yeah.
And you'll see it. Take a glass of water and pour it on there and it just disappears.
Yeah.
And you're like, where did that go?
Yeah. Right into the brick.
It's gone into the brick, and then it goes down into your insulation layer underneath, the calcium silicate board. And man, the calcium silicate board, that is a sponge like no other.
Yeah, so that takes a while to get rid of the moisture.
And it'll hold a huge volume of water. I think its apparent porosity, so how much water it can hold, I think is close to 90% of its volume.
Really?
It's amazing.
Wow,
it can hold so much water. Now, good news is it doesn't mind. It won't like become this mush or something like that. It actually retains its strength even when it's saturated, which is very good news.
Yeah, that is good news, isn't it? Yeah,
yeah, right. Otherwise, we'd be getting a lot of worried phone calls.
Yeah, from America.
I haven't got water on it. Is it going to fall apart? No, it doesn't. It doesn't dissolve. It doesn't fall apart. But what it does is it becomes conductive. So now instead of this amazing high temperature insulator that you could, you put an oxy torch on one side, I'll put my hand on the other side of the calcium.
Really?
It's amazing.
Is it really?
It is just incredible. If you make it wet, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Are you not?
Right? Because the water will pass the heat through.
Yep, sure.
And so what is happening, that the chap that I mentioned before who said, oh, my oven's, it's cooling down like overnight. It's not taking 3 days. It's like overnight, it's cooled down. His oven would have been completely saturated with water. And so when he fires it up, some of the bricks heat up and he's able to cook some pizzas, probably having a hard time doing that. But then all the heat is just sucked out of the oven through that wet insulation. And it's absorbed in trying to evaporate the water.
Yeah, sure.
So you just lose all this energy. So when it comes to building an oven outdoors, like how should that affect you? So if your oven's built outdoors and it's getting rained on, your oven at home is absorbing water when it's rained on. If you're like Chris Volzo and you use your oven 3 times a week, I don't care how much it rains. It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It will never get wet.
That's
it will
right.
just constantly be dried out. If you use the oven once a week or even once a fortnight, still fine, no problems. It's when you leave your oven for 6 months, or in your case, say 3 months, you could come back, and if you've had a really wet summer, your oven will be quite waterlogged.
And right now, mine is.
Yeah.
Right. So I haven't had mine on for about 3 months. Been pretty busy with work. My daughter had a big birthday recently. We had 40 folk around at home. I was allowed to put on the wood-fired oven. I wasn't allowed to cook in it. That's another story. But for the ambience and the warmth and stuff, because it looks great just as a fire. I went and checked the temperature the next day. Now, I pumped it up in the end. Maybe I shouldn't have been, but I just threw the logs in there as normal and got this thing raging. The next day, it was far cooler than I was expecting.
Yep.
And I'm just assuming it's still waterlogged because we've had some of the worst rain we've had in Brisbane in a decade. Yep. And I imagine that's why.
That's exactly why. It's in fact, it's the only thing that it can be.
Yeah.
Unless you said, oh, well, actually a tree fell on our oven and it's
broken.
actually it's broken. And I'd say, well, that could have something to do with it.
No,
it's water.
Yeah.
And so I think, and this is so. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on and talk about this.
It's great.
It's so cool. So we have a video coming out about it, but this is fun to talk about as well.
Yeah.
So basically, if your oven is retaining water, you will be losing heat at a much greater rate than you should be. Is it damaging the oven? Well, now here's the thing. In a warm climate, so remember, we started the business in Australia in 2011, and it wasn't like until years later that we started selling the ovens in America. So pretty well, most of the photos that you see and a lot of the B-roll and stuff in the videos is of Australian ovens, built outdoors, out in the weather. In a warm climate, water in your oven is basically what you've experienced. It's annoying. It's not destructive.
No.
It's a pain in the butt. In America, specifically in, say, North America, in cold areas, and America, the lovely Canadian customers who I can't wait to sell up to you guys.
We're going to talk about that, I think, next week.
You have to think about this because if you go into winter and your oven is waterlogged, and there's a whole page on this in our instructions, by the way. This is not like new information, but I really want to make sure I talk about every possible opportunity.
It's great.
If you go into winter and your oven is holding, say, as much water as yours is, you would experience freeze thaw cracking.
Okay.
It's called heaving.
Heaving.
So basically, water expands when it freezes. It gets bigger. Ice. So if you have an ice block, you'll find that when the amount of water that you put in the ice block, when you freeze it, it expands.
Yep.
That's what ice. So the solid version of water is bigger than the liquid version. And the problem there is if your calcil board is full of water, that water is going to freeze and expand.
That's
going
to
be try and jack up your oven.
Yeah, right. Interesting.
And it's something that we want our customers to avoid.
Yep.
And so in those cold climates, we basically have a series of instructions for people in cold climates. Ideally, they would build their oven under cover. Like very few people are going to build their oven indoors. You can do it, but that's not going to be the vast majority. If you're going to build it outdoors, then think about building a roof over it such that no rain ever falls on it, right? Now, again, that's a massive project. So for most people, that's as big a project as building the oven.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? If I said to you, Mark, you got to build a roof over your oven, you're like, do I have to?
No, I just go to Bunnings and get a big tent.
Yeah. So
bothered.
the overarching concept is the oven has to be dry through winter.
Yeah.
If you said, what's the rule? The oven must be bone dry through those winter months.
Yeah.
How do you achieve that? Well, you can keep it dry all the time with a roof, right? And the beauty of having, say, a roof over it is you can be undercover while the oven is. So in the situation of 3 months of rain, maybe you do want to do some cooking, you could. You don't have to be standing out there kind of sad with an umbrella and while all your friends are inside laughing and having a great time. So that's something to think about.
Yeah.
And it's not even something you have to do right away. And I'll tell you how we can get away with that. But having a roof over the whole thing so that the oven just doesn't get rained on is like the A level, the best. If you said, well, I need you to guarantee this isn't going to be a problem. That's how I can guarantee it.
Yeah.
Don't let the oven get rained on. All right. Another option is to build the oven into a little house.
Yep.
And this is what you see a lot. You were saying
you do
in North America, Canada,
they'd be little houses,
little houses
around the oven. They're so cute.
They're very tough and manly.
They look great.
No, they do. They look awesome.
But
we had someone
cool.
do a full stone one.
Yeah. Oh, they're cool. They really are something special.
But it's a very practical thing. It's like, well, why do they do that? And the reason is they know about freezing.
Yeah.
They're well aware. They've got foundations in their house that go 6 feet down because of the frost line.
Okay, right.
Because the ground freezes down for 5 feet.
Amazing. Yeah.
So they're aware of that. And so they've built their wood-fired ovens to accommodate that. They built them into this enclosure. So you no longer see the dome of the oven. You don't even see the flue gallery and the flue. It's all inside. You basically take the walls of the stand and just keep going up.
Okay.
And then put a roof over that. Let the flue go through that. And then you create an opening in that so that you can get at the oven inside. And you make it so that you can seal that opening so that water doesn't get in. Now you've protected your oven from the elements. So that's another way of doing it. Again, it's involved. And it's something I do want to do a bit of a detailed video on how you might achieve that. The last option is my least preferred because I can't guarantee it 100%. It's kind of hard to confirm. There is a method, and I'll go through it. You can sort of confirm, is it going to work for you? But basically, it's you leave the oven outside, and as you come into autumn or fall, as
our friends in the north would say,
So as you come towards the end of autumn, you need to winterize the oven. And I actually got an email on this morning. What you would do is you would fire the oven, you would dry it out. So you assume, like your oven, you would assume that it's waterlogged. And you do a series of big firings, not little curing fires. I'm talking big firings because it's really hard to get the water out of that calcium silicate board because of where it is. You have to get a lot of heat into the floor.
Yeah.
It's quite easy to heat up the dome.
Yeah.
Any water that's retained in, say, the dome or the ceramic foil blanket, dead easy to get that out. Your first firing will probably deal with nearly all of it. But the floor is different. The floor, you've got to get heat into the floor so it soaks through the brick and then it gets into the calcium and it vaporizes all that water, drives it out. Okay. So that's going to take we're going to be doing a video on winterizing your oven.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
And you're going to basically fire the living daylights out of it. You're probably going to have to burn about 120 kilos of fire.
Yeah, that's good fun.
Maybe more. Right? Yeah.
That's good fun.
You don't even have to cook anything. You just look at it if you want.
Just look at it with a glass of wine or two or three.
The idea is to dry the oven out and make sure that it's
super
bone dry. Now, then, once it's dry, you would take the flue off and you would cover the oven with a heavy-duty tarpaulin and then ratchet strap that tarpaulin around your stand such that it's not going to blow off. Before you put your tarpaulin on, I would actually be recommending to put some kind of supports, something soft ideally, so that your tarpaulin is not rubbing on your dome. The dome is like sandpaper.
Yeah.
And you've got 3 months of wind whipping the tarpaulin against sandpaper, you're going to wear through.
Yeah, sure.
So you don't get one of those cheap blue tarps from Bunnings.
No.
You spend the money and you get
a proper
heavy
job.
duty.
Yeah.
And you strap that on. And so basically you've got this big tarpaulin over your bone dry oven and you leave it that way for the winter. And that way the oven's dry throughout your winter, no freeze thaw problems, happy days.
Interesting.
Now, how you would, my concern with that method is, how do you know 100% that you got every bit of water out of that oven before winter. And the way that I've given this a tiny bit of thought, you can buy moisture level meters.
Yep.
I don't think they're particularly expensive. And you could basically drill a little hole
Yep.
through, I would look at sort of somewhere around the vent area, maybe
Yep.
through the side.
Yep.
What you want to see is there water in my calcil board? And you could probe that. It's a bit involved, isn't it? It's all we're getting high, we're getting moisture level meters.
Oh,
We're
no,
probing.
hang on, this sounds fun. I'll do that on mine. Yeah.
So to cover it all again, if you're in a cold climate, water can be destructive for ovens, and like some of our competitors in America actually have in their warranty, if your oven gets wet, the warranty is void. Right?
Yeah,
we don't
right.
have that. That's not part of our warranty, but because your oven can get wet, it won't fall apart. It's going into winter. You do not want your oven to be wet.
No, it's quite a
We're
different kettle
very
of fish,
clear
isn't
on
it?
that.
Yeah.
We're like, we really want to make sure that if you're in a cold climate, you know the risks.
Yeah.
But once you know, you can deal with it. It doesn't have to be a problem. It's just something you're aware of.
Yeah.
But if you're not aware of it and you go into winter and your oven starts raising up off the stand,
That would be quite something to see, wouldn't it?
not
you'd
something you
freak
wanna
out a
see.
little bit.
Not
Yeah.
something- So that's our cold climate friends. They've got to
Okay.
be very careful. But in a warm climate, it's just a frustrating thing where water's getting into the oven and it's just interrupting, sort of interfering with our enjoyment of it. Now, the question that I'm sure some of your listeners have is, well, can you make a cover? Can we have a cover like a barbecue cover that we throw over the oven? I have spent months trying to get a cover made.
Really?
Yeah, I've had several made, and they're hideous.
Are they?
They're hideous.
No.
They're like an ugly old bag.
No.
Because it's such a complex shape.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I would have a form like a snuggly.
Oh, it would be,
form-fitted
wouldn't
cover,
it?
right?
Yeah, nicely engineered.
Can you imagine all of the stitching and the panels that would be needed to make it a nice smooth cover? And so I've given it to canvas companies. I'm like, here's a 3D model of the oven. Can you make a fitted cover for this? And they've just said, look, that's not something we would really want to do. It's too complex.
Too hard.
They could do it technically, but the cost would be just ferocious.
Yeah, okay.
The other big problem, even if we had one made that I came to, I think I've thought about this for tens of hours.
It sounds like
I thought I just because
You've thought this well through.
It's a big thing. If I could come up with a solution, it would be brilliant. If you put a wrap around the oven and water, so that sheds the water off onto your stand. It doesn't stop it from getting in. It can get like it'll want to like creep back in. Like so, you would have to have a cover that went down over your granite landing and made sure that no water ran back under.
So that's right.
We know, like for the edges of the stand, we've got that water barrier to stop it getting under the render. But like say that on the landing, we'd have to make sure that the water shed all the way off the landing, didn't go back in under the cover or something. But everyone's landing is different. Everyone does something different.
Yeah.
So everyone's stand is a different size. Everyone's landing is different. The installations are all so unique, and that's awesome, but it does make it very challenging to make a waterproof cover that would work for everybody.
Okay, so what you did with the D105 to assist with some of this water runoff is you angled the landing slightly away from the mouth of the oven. And I could see that small design feature playing its part when it rains.
Absolutely.
When it rains normal. Okay, we're doing normal rain. Very little water. Rainwater actually can go inside the oven.
Water that falls on your landing, that should run off, unless there's a bit of wind, right? Yeah. Which is driving it into the oven. But if you have rain running on an angle into the mouth of the oven,
3 weeks.
That's going to be soaked
in.
It is. And so be aware, like we are working on what we're calling like a weather guard, which will be something that fits like an external door for the oven that wraps around the front. I'm trying to make it in a way that it's going to be, we're going to be able to ship it because the size, if I was to make it out of folded stainless, it would be enormous. It would be a very big box, very expensive. I'm trying to make it cost effective for everyone, but I want to make a rain guard that will basically just wrap around the front of the oven so you won't see the bricks anymore. They'll be gone, hidden behind this bit of stainless steel. And that will pick up probably 75% of the rain and divert it off. But it's still sort of a prototype thing that I'm working on.
It's very innovative, Ben. You're quite an innovative guy.
Stop it.
No, you are. Okay, but all of this great innovation, my oven's damp now. I've used it once. I use it another couple of times, which is no dramas to me, just simply to light it up and enjoy the fire. It's pretty much going to resolve the issue anyway. And we have had some serious rain in Brisbane, and it'll be fine, right?
Yeah,
2 week fine. Yeah, it's fine.
Got photos. So we actually got photos, and I saw it, and It was from someone in Lismore, and they had the floods, like people's literally whole houses were submerged.
Yeah.
And they had a photo of their oven, and just the top of the dome was poking out of the water. Right, it was completely submerged.
Sad, isn't it?
It was like they were very fortunate. Their house was up on stilts, and
Yeah.
most of their goods were fine, and their family was fine, which is the most important thing. Well, I said, look, just let it sit there, let the water recede. Obviously, once the water's receded, just leave it for a week. Let some of that water just drain out, and then just start your curing fires again. Go back. That's the worst. That's like literally completely saturated.
Yeah.
Start your curing fires again. The materials haven't dissolved. They're all still there exactly where they were before. They're just really wet.
Yeah.
So now we're going to just dry the oven out. And that's a severe example. I actually would love, if you said, Ben, you've got like unlimited budget and time and you can film whatever videos you want.
That would be a great one.
I would build a glass tank, and I would lower the oven into it and submerge it, right?
So I challenge you to
bubbles
do
would be
that.
coming out. But I'm not a YouTuber with like some unlimited budget, all right?
No.
So
come on now. You've got enough bricks out there to do it.
There's a few bricks. But I would show you this oven being completely saturated, and then I would lift it out and I'd plonk it down next to this big tank and I'd say, right, we're going to leave this for a week and we're going to come back and I'm going to dry it out. And then I'd
That
go
would be
through,
interesting, though. That would be really interesting.
There'd be a montage.
Oh, it'd be great.
And of me doing the curing fires again, of going really small fires, building them up, driving the moisture out.
Sounds like you've got this planned out in your head already. So you are going to do it. I can see why you are going to do it.
But basically, the end of that process, once we've gone through all the curing fires, we're going to do it. It's going to take at least like 4 major firings at the end of that. We would have our oven back to normal again.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
And it's so in the less severe example of your oven, which has just been out in the rain for a few months, it wasn't literally underwater.
Phenomenal.
Hey, you're just going to have to do a few firings to drive that moisture out.
Absolutely.
And your oven will start behaving the way it should.
Yeah.
And then I would say, think about if you're not going to use it for 3 months, think about putting some kind of cover over it. You're in a warm climate. You don't have to.
I'm not going to put a cover over it.
And you know why?
I still like looking at my bricks.
Exactly.
I love my bricks.
Exactly. And that's
place those bricks and they're perfectly imperfect.
Yeah.
I'm not going to cover those up with nothing.
And this is why.
Bugger the rain.
This is why I can't. One of the reasons I haven't made a cover is
you won't sell it to
has
me.
to be. Well, like the cover has to be really perfect and beautiful
It does.
because the oven's beautiful.
It is.
And if you cover it with a hideous old bag,
Yeah.
it's just you're sort of seeing.
That's
You're like,
right.
that's a bit. What's that? It's not that attractive. So for those listening out there who are like, why hasn't he made a cover yet? I hope this helps you understand.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah,
but at the same
challenge.
time, I really want people to understand you don't need to like freak out about your oven getting wet. But as long as you know, if your oven gets wet, this is what happens. It will take longer to heat up because you're trying to drive out moisture, and it will cool down faster because the insulation is not nearly as efficient. Then once you know that, then you can deal with it, and you're not surprised by it.
Nicely summed up. Another listener question, Ben. We've touched on this a little bit. Another thing regarding the build process, getting contractors to build it for you if you don't have the confidence to build it yourself. I'm sure there are some horror stories out there, this listener goes on to ask, of dodgy guys out there making a mess of the build. A, have you had a few dodgy builds? And B, any recommendations of things to ask the builders before you pay them to build your oven? Because I suppose not everyone will probably want to build it themselves.
That's absolutely. We find actually quite a significant number of people love a wood-fired oven, but they either don't have the time or maybe they think they don't have the skill to do it themselves. Now, on the skill thing, I'd say, look, if you're scared of IKEA furniture, maybe don't have a crack at building one of our ovens.
Yep. Yes, right.
But
they got good instructions.
But if you're scared of their furniture, then our build might be a little bit challenging. But if you're a bit handy, I would say have a crack at it. But that said, some people just don't have the time, or they would prefer to put the time into work or in family and so on. They would rather just pay someone to build it for them. Right. So how do you find someone who's going to do a good job? We do have some professional installers that we can recommend. Now, at the moment, we only have them sort of dotted around Australia. They don't work for us.
So not just in Melbourne? Okay.
So yeah, we've got a couple in Melbourne. We've got a couple in Byron Bay. We've got a couple, one up in Brisbane, one in Adelaide. We've got them dotted around.
There's a few guys out there who have some amazing Instagram accounts.
Yeah.
So I presume these are some of these guys.
If you look up, like Giuseppe is a Melbourne.flamemason.
Yes, Flame Mason. Oh my gosh, fantastic work.
I love Giuseppe. He is just a gem.
We'll put his link in the show notes as well. Fantastic.
So like he's just one of many builders that we have on our website. So you look up a professional installers page. There's these contacts.
Okay.
And you say, well, Ben, why don't you have? At the moment, we don't have one in Sydney, right?
Don't you?
And why not? And I don't have a single one in America. Why not? Because it takes an awful lot of time for me to build that relationship where I trust them to do a really good job.
Yep.
Right. And now, look, I'm sure there are some shonky operators out there, and look, there's shonky operators in just about every field, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, in terms of finding someone who's going to do a great job for you, the guys on our list are vetted and we're confident. And that's why we put them on our list is, well, we're willing to say they are going to do a great job for you. And so that's why there's not that many on our list, because it takes quite a while for us to build that confidence that they're going to do a good job. Okay. In terms of then you're like, well, Ben, you're not helping me. Like, I'm in California and I would love to have someone build this for me. If you can find someone, maybe a friend could recommend a landscaper or a bricklayer, a stonemason, hard landscaper, contractor, someone who works with their hands, they will be able to build our oven to the same standard as Giuseppe. Or I hate to put myself in the same league.
But you designed your ovens to be nice and simple.
Correct.
To build for guys like me who've never touched a brick and mortar in my life.
They are designed for DIY.
Yeah.
And so if you find a good tradesman, let's say, who is willing to take their time and has good attention to detail, they're going to do just as good a job as Giuseppe, as any of our builders, because they're following the instructions and so on. So if you're outside of an area where we have one of our recommended builders, and so you're like, well, I don't have that option, Ben, find a good recommended contractor or a landscaper, stonemason, and show them the videos and say, look, can you build this for me? And if you've seen maybe some of the other work and they're putting good attention to detail into that work, they should do it.
They should better do it fine.
Yeah, because it's a DIY.
Cooking in your wood-fired oven. We touched a little bit that you're actually quite an expert at cooking in your oven.
See, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to say that.
Come on now. Anyway.
It's some very, very specific dishes.
How about smoking a pork shoulder inside a D105?
Thank you for touching on one of my very specific dishes.
That was fantastic.
It was so much fun, man.
Now, I'd like to just have a quick chat about that.
Please.
About that video. How many times did you have to smoke a pork shoulder before you shot that video?
All right. So, for those of you who haven't seen the video, it's tremendously long, as all of our videos are.
But it was only about 56 minutes.
I show you how to use a wood-fired oven as a smoker.
It was genius.
I could talk about that for a long time. But so in a short answer, I think I did it 5 times before I shot the video.
Yeah.
Just improving my process each time, making sure, because I don't want to just make something up and say to everyone, hey, you should do this. So I wanted to test it. But even on the day of doing the video, I put in ideas that I hadn't planned to before. It makes it exciting, I tell you.
For me personally, it's probably one of my favorite videos that you've done. And I've got, I've just sold 2 of my smokers, but I've still got 2 smokers. I've been cooking in my smokers longer than I've been cooking in my D105 by about a decade. I love my smokers. So you claim in your video that you can smoke a pork shoulder to challenge a pork shoulder smoked in a smoker. And I would have to agree that you can. And having cooked probably 50 pork shoulders in my smokers and 1 in my wood-fired oven, I would say it does an exceptional job. And I think the process that you showed in your video was spectacular. Can you run the listeners through?
Sure. Because
I know as soon as I've listened to this podcast, just watch Ben's video after listening to this podcast. It is a great a video on how to smoke in a wood-fired oven. Quickly run through the process that you did.
Okay, so if you want to use your wood-fired oven as a smoker, and man, I talk for way too long on all these subjects, right?
Oh, this is great. As a podcast host,
it's using your oven. It's not a pizza oven.
Of course
it's
not.
Wood-fired
It's a wood-fired oven.
Right? And I try so hard.
Hallelujah.
Right? I try really hard not to call it a pizza oven. I still do. I try. I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
No,
I'm pleased to know because hashtag not just a pizza oven.
Not just a pizza oven,
no.
right? So you can cook a whole bunch of stuff in it. And of course your mind goes to bread, maybe roasts. Maybe you're doing some grilling,
Yep.
like on your the Tuscan grill that we make.
some tapas. Oh, we love doing tapas in ours. Oh, it's great.
So there's all this other stuff, but what about smoking? And I actually put it to Matt Redman, is a customer of mine, and he's part of a competition barbecue team in Queensland. And I said, could you try using your oven as a smoker? Because he does smoking on weekends, like for fun. And he said, fine, I'll have a go. I'll let you know how I go. And he came back to me with this whole process. And so I take very little credit for the process. I've refined it a little bit, but he has spent hours on the phone with me going through it and coaching me and everything. So what you do is you fire up your oven well before you're planning on doing smoking. So you might do, say, pizza on a Friday night.
Yep.
400 degrees Celsius. All day Saturday, it'll start off at about, say, 260. 12 hours later, it'll be 260 Celsius. By the end of the day, it's probably getting down to about the 180 mark.
Yeah.
By the start of Sunday, though, now you're getting down to the mid-hundreds in Celsius terms. Where we were after was around, I think I was targeting about 130 degrees. Now, you can help the oven cool down a little faster by taking the door out. Oh, we could talk about that for ages. But basically, you let the oven cool down. So you heat the oven up, you let the fire go out, and then you let the oven cool down to the point that the actual temperature that you're after. And that's what's called cooking in a falling oven. So that the temperature of the oven is falling. There's no additional energy being put in. The oven is cooling down now. But it's very, very gradual. Right. In terms of what is smoking, though? Oh, heavens. So smoking is a way of cooking, and hot smoking specifically is cooking using some heat and smoke, as the name would suggest, hot smoking.
And it's divine.
It is so delicious. And so in order to do hot smoking, you need heat, you need smoke. And you need really consistent heat is what you're after. You don't want heat that's going up and down and varying all over the place. You want this consistent heat. Well, the oven is providing this heat. You've got, in the case of the D105, you've got a metric ton of thermal mass that is well cocooned in the insulation. Yeah. And so it provides this incredibly stable heat source, but it is cooling down. So I'm just going to cover the heat side of it first, then we'll talk about the smoke, and then we can talk about the meat. So we wanted pretty stable 130 degrees, and we wanted that for about 8 hours. Now, you could go a little lower and slower, and push your cook out to like 14 hours. 18
hours for me sometimes.
Jeez. Yeah. So but hey, I was filming with Joel, and while he's my best friend,
he doesn't want to stick around 18 hours.
He is not that patient.
You look at it, I've actually gone back to my sort of 10-hour smokes in my smoker on my pork shoulders now, and I reckon there's a sweet spot between the 8 and 10 hours now. Yeah. I think the result you get there is almost just as good at 18 hours. Not kind of worth doing it. Anyway, it's
give it a go. It's something everyone should try, maybe.
Absolutely.
But hey, so we're cooking in a falling oven. This is not a magical device that just holds temperature without any energy input, right? So if you were just to, say, put your meat in and get your smoke going, your oven would still be cooling down. And by the end of 8 hours, you would probably drop from 130 to about somewhere between 100 and 110.
You put a big hunk of cold pork in there as well. So yeah,
exactly. Okay. So you're putting in like 3 kilos of pork. Well, there's something that's absorbing heat. It's going to drop the temperature a little bit. Right. So we need some energy input. We need to put a tiny bit of energy, a bit of heat into the oven to hold the temperature. And that's where charcoal comes in. And now you can use lump charcoal. You could use briquettes. Yep. I really love the lump charcoal because it's just natural.
That's gorgeous, isn't it? I love it.
But the key thing, and this is the thing that I added in. So what we're going to do, and what I did in one of my earlier cooks was I had the pork in there. I had my smoke going, which I'll describe in a sec. And then in order to maintain the temperature, I had a little pile of charcoal on the floor. Yep. And I was just adding little bits of charcoal to this little pile. And that was sitting there just burning, not a big pile, like a handful. And it was just providing just a tiny bit of heat input into the oven in order to hold the temperature. Now you've got to keep in mind, in terms of how the oven's looking at the moment, the door is basically shut. It's just tiny bit open.
You've cracked it just on one side.
Just to let a little bit of air in and let a little bit of smoke out. And so we've got just enough air to feed that charcoal, and that's providing some heat input that is then enabling us to hold the oven at the temperature for as long as we want. We just have to keep on top of that charcoal. Now, what I did, it was just such a blessing that I walked into Bunnings that day. I wandered through the barbecue area, and I looked up at the shelf, and there's these charcoal baskets.
Yes.
Never heard of the dang things. I saw it, I was like,
That's what I
I'll
need.
grab a couple of those.
I'm going to manufacture those.
No, I'm just going to recommend you get them from your local hardware store. They're like $12.
Yeah.
So I grabbed these things, and what it meant was I can have my charcoal in this little metal basket that is movable, and it's not a pile of charcoal on the floor that's frankly a bit of a mess. I could pull it, get my pan hook or my oven tool, pull it out, put a bit of charcoal in it, push it back in.
Genius.
Again. Anyway, so in terms of heat, so hot smoking, the heat is mostly from the residual heat in the walls and the floor of the oven. And holding the heat so that it doesn't just keep falling, we do with that charcoal. And we could have done it for, I don't care if you want to do a 36-hour cook, we just keep putting that charcoal in. And it's basic thermodynamics. It's this equation of you've got energy in, energy out. Anyway, sorry, I won't go into that. But so we've got our heat now, and we're able to manage that. And we can keep track of it using, there's some pretty funky thermometers out there. Yeah. And I was using a Fireboard product, which
fantastic.
Is awesome.
Yep.
I don't even sell them yet. We're going to.
I bought one.
It's good, isn't it?
I bought it for two reasons. One, I wanted to use it with my smokers.
Yes.
And two, I want to really crank up my oven and do some episodes on the full decay of heat and track this heat on a graph. But like Clive did, the unit is amazing, right? Oh, so you did tell me you're going to be stocking them pretty soon, and I would highly recommend guys come to you and grab one of those because they're amazing.
Get them from anyone. And they are expensive. They are fantastic. But they're at the high end of the range. There's some cheaper options out there that don't have quite the functionality.
But they're also
the only ones
probes. Yes,
go on. Most of the fancy sort of probe thermometer systems that are on the market use what's called a thermistor.
Yeah.
A thermistor is a little probe, a little metal probe, and it will go up to about 300 degrees or so.
Yeah.
Thereafter, it breaks.
Yeah.
Right? You can't take it beyond that, you kill it. Now, it's very easy to get your oven to way over 400 or 500 degrees.
Easy.
So the Fireboard Pro 2 is the only system on the market that I'm aware of that uses thermocouples. A thermocouple is not as responsive as a thermistor. Thermistors have a very quick response time. When you stick them in a piece of meat, they give you an answer right away. A thermocouple is a little slower, but who cares? What we're wanting to measure is, say, the oven air temperature.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm actually, I've just got some samples. I'm going to be making these thermo wells. It's like a stainless steel tube. You've got one in the wall of your oven right now with the gauge in it. Did you have the...
No.
Oh, you didn't put the gauge in the wall of your oven?
No, I didn't.
Basically, I'm making these thermo wells, and it's a stainless steel tube that will mount through the wall, and you can slide a thermocouple into it. So it gives you a port that you can put a thermocouple probe into.
How will I do that now in my oven?
You'll need a drill.
We'll through the side. Hey, we'll.
It'll be fun. Anyway, so basically we used the Fireboard when we were doing the smoking. We had a couple of probes set up.
Brilliant.
So one in the oven, and there was one in the meat.
Yep.
And it was giving us feedback constantly of this is how hot the oven is, this is how hot the internal temperature of the meat is. And the beauty of the Fireboard is you can set up alarms in your phone. So I could set it up so that if it got over 135,
it pings you.
It would ping me. If it got below 125, it would ping me, and I go, I need to go and put a bit more charcoal on.
Clever stuff.
And so it was, and I honestly only had to do it maybe adding more charcoal. I think I had to do it over 8 hours. I think I did it 6 times.
Damn.
It was just, I was amazed. I honestly thought I was going to be putting on charcoal every half an hour.
Interesting.
And it just wasn't. So anyway, heat. That's our heat, and that's how we're managing it. We were using this Fireboard system, but you don't need that. Man, you could
it's kind of cool though.
It's cool. Oh,
it's cool.
Come
on, we do need it. Anyway,
I want to make sure that. So we're not a business that's trying to flog you every single thing, right? You don't need a Fireboard. It is a sexy toy. It's so cool.
It even looks
so cool, but you don't need.
No, of course you don't.
You can do it differently. So you could do all of this without the Fireboard.
Yep.
You could be looking at a gauge in the side of your oven to see what the temperature is and making sure you're staying on top of that.
You couldn't control that remotely from a different state, though.
No, you can't.
No.
But anyway, and then in terms of monitoring the meat, hey, you could get like. Bunnings has these little thermistor probes that you can just stick in the meat, and it'll give you an instant reading. And you could do that every couple of hours.
Okay, smoke.
How do we generate smoke? So I engineer. I like repeatability. I want to get the same result time and time again. You can make you could generate smoke by putting a wet log, let's say, on a bed of coals. Very hard to repeat that every single time the same. Get your iron bark log and dry it out or make it wet or whatever and put it on your coals and get the smoke going. Pellets. There are these, you can get pellets in a whole variety of flavors, all your fruit woods, everything.
Yep.
And then you just need something to put the pellets in. There are these you've got smoker tubes, there's smoke mazes, and basically they're a perforated metal container that you fill with pellets and you light one end. It takes a bit of lighting. You need like one of those little propane burners.
Yep.
You get the pellets smoldering and then they burn like a fuse. And they burn for like 6 hours and they give off all this smoke.
Yep.
So you
Gorgeous.
in the video, I use smoke tubes and I put that in the oven, lit them up, and they generate huge amounts of smoke. And they're consistent and they're repeatable. And I can say, I want cherry and apple, or I want mesquite or whatever wood I want. And so you've got your heat and you've got your smoke. And again, those like the smoker tubes are very cheap.
Yeah.
You can get them very easily.
Bunnings sound cheap.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got those available to you. Have a play with it.
Yeah,
eh?
it's good fun.
It's just I was so satisfied when I did it for the first time.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, I couldn't believe it worked.
Yeah, fantastic.
I was just pumped.
Yeah.
And I'd really encourage people to give it a go because you don't have to run out and buy the fireboard in order to do stuff.
No, you don't. No, you don't. And I think if you're looking for different ways to utilize this investment that you've now built in your backyard, and if you don't have a smoker, I think 100% look for as many different ways that you can use this amazing cooking chamber to your benefit. And smoking, like the way you demonstrate it, is a fantastic way of doing it. I think it's great.
It's a great way of using up that lower end.
It is. Yeah.
Of the residual heat
Absolutely.
cycle as the oven really cools
Absolutely.
down.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic thing to do with that because otherwise you can't really bake at
No,
those temperatures.
no, it's just it's a
but you
bit
can
cool
smoke.
now. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can. Okay. Andirons.
Yes.
Now, you and I have talked about this before.
Yep.
I love my andiron.
Yeah.
And I couldn't buy it from you, but that's
Yes.
okay.
Well, we don't have one.
No, you don't.
No.
I was thinking you could do a wood-fired oven podcast andiron.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool? Clive uses an andiron. He loves it. Actually, I'm a big fan of the andiron. I reckon it allows me a bit more versatility with my heat, with my flame.
Yep.
It's apart from my hook, it's probably my second favourite tool at the moment.
Yes.
Why don't you make one?
Well, so I think you like it because you're getting are you getting better combustion?
I think so. I
See,
think
this is, again, I want to do some kind of testing on this.
Come up to my house.
Because here's I want to have two ovens. I want them side by side.
Absolutely.
And I want to go right. This one, they're both running at the same temperature. We're going to take a log. We're going to weigh each log, and we're going to throw it in that oven.
Yeah, you probably find you prove me wrong, but look, if I can get a small log sitting just off the floor, I think I probably get better oxygenation around the.
But I'm
log.
finding, and it is depending on the temperature you're running at. If your oven's at 400 degrees, you can throw a log on the floor, flat on the floor. It will erupt into flames.
Yeah.
So like Chris Bozzo, the fires that man burns.
Oh my god!
Like they are just ferocious,
Have
right?
you seen the size of those logs? They're massive.
They're massive.
Man,
There's no andiron in that oven.
No, there's
No.
not.
And so I'm not saying it's bad.
No. Have you played with one?
I haven't played with one yet.
Okay, you must.
I'm willing to. I'm willing. I'm not saying I'm not like some anti-andiron guy.
How can I convince you to start testing?
But again, I want to make sure it's like with the Fireboard. It's an awesome tool. It is brilliant. But you don't have to have one in order to enjoy your oven. And I want to make sure that
I agree. I 100%. I 100%
So
agree.
I would say-
but I do think
Yes.
it enhances your use of the oven significantly.
yeah, if you're the thing that I want to make is sort of on a similar vein but different. I want to make it's very simple as well. I made one out of just a piece of angle iron. So 100 by 100 angle iron, like an L shape, but about 500 mil long. And I took it and I just shoved it into the bed of coals and I used that to ramp the coals back out of the way. Now I have more
I've
cooking
seen that
area.
done. Yeah.
That to me, and now the problem with steel is, it's just going to flog out. You're going to rust it very quickly. It's going to burn out. I'll make it in stainless. It'll have some awesome laser cut parts. It'll have our logo in it.
Laser cutter we're going to see next week.
Yeah. So that'll give us something to do with that laser cutter. Anyway,
you can
like
make an andiron.
that I get it. I'm just not. I'm not.
You're not convinced, are you?
that it's making a profound difference to the performance of your oven. I can see how.
I'm not
it
saying
could
it
help.
makes a profound difference to my performance of my
Yes.
oven, but I reckon I get more flame Okay, ignore the Chris Vozos of this world, where I might like to have, I like to have flame in my oven, even when I'm retain cooking, just retain heat cooking, because I like the flame, right? And if I can get a couple of logs off the floor, I get flame all around it.
That's different. So, because I'm thinking, my mind will go straight to big fires, right? And in a big fire situation, I don't think the andiron's doing anything for you. If you have a massive fire roaring, you could literally just put a log flat on the floor and it will just be engulfed in flames.
It glows bright red though. It's kind of cool.
It is cool. But so in the setting that you're describing, where you're burning at, say, 300 degrees or something, then actually I think it would make a difference, because at those temperatures you don't get the same kind of combustion of the timber. You're not getting the same gasification of the wood. So by having it raised so that you can get heat all around it, you are going to get more flame and less smouldering in those. So
I like to
I've
balance
come around.
the
You
wood.
convinced me.
There you go. So the wood fire oven podcast. After I've had a couple of beers, I quite like to balance the wood on the andiron and just see if I can just get it there.
How do you not burn? You like?
No, I do.
This is why you've got no arm
I
hair.
burn myself last weekend. That's right. I had a listener email me on the podcast when asking about andirons.
Yes.
If you talk him
I
into
swear you
making
got
one,
shares in andirons. Go on, yeah.
He says if you talk him into making one for the D105. Good luck with that. Ask them to produce a smaller one for the P85 and perhaps for smaller ovens too.
Look, I think
there are some other really cool manufacturers of even in Australia of really small ovens, right? Pizza ovens, and I don't know. I think you need to think about that, Mr. Dean.
For an instantaneous heat oven, like a direct fired oven, where it's a stainless, but effectively a stainless steel box. Yeah, andiron there would be almost critical, because you don't have the thermal mass to just throw in a log and have it take off. So that might be a really good tool. Actually, Dennis, Grand Ridge Forge, who makes all our oven tools.
Oh, they're gorgeous.
He's been working on an andiron design for a while.
Has he just?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will.
Is that the Wood Fired Oven podcast andiron?
No. Maybe.
No.
You'd have to talk to Dennis.
Come on, Dennis.
It's not
get
me.
in touch.
You'd have to talk to Dennis.
Seriously. No, but that'd be great. That'd be great. Make sure
I see, because we really we want to make sure that we're offering really good accessories, ideally Australian made, for wood-fired ovens, like top level quality, something that's going to be there forever. So if I make an andiron, it'll be stainless steel. So it won't be mild steel, because they just won't last forever. It's the nature of steel and fire. So it would be something like that. But I'll run it by Dennis.
You run it by Dennis. What about a skewer rack?
Yes.
What about a skewer rack?
One of the things I've been thinking of.
What have you been
thinking? I remember you sent me the drawing years ago. It was ages ago.
It's about 3,000 years ago now.
I've been busy, all right?
Anyway, but one of the things I love to do with my oven, though, and I've done it so many times now, I've got these big, gorgeous stainless steel skewers. I think, it must be.
Yes. I've seen these on your Instagram.
Oh, look, and I just...
And the butter chicken.
The chicken tikka masala is... But these things are about a metre long, right? And so the first time I did it, the reason I raise it is the first time I did it, I put the skewers at the mouth of the oven. That's great. I wasn't really using the oven as it should, more of a barbecue anyway. So on the second time I did it, I decided to get flatter and longer skewers and now push the whole thing into the oven. So now I'm getting all the gorgeous heat off the dome, hitting these gorgeous chicken thighs that rippling over the charcoals as well. And I use bricks, and I had to prop them up with bricks. And on both sides, I had to put bricks in. And actually, so I ended up having bricks right across the mouth of the oven. And what did that do? Well, it stopped the air drawing into the oven. And the fire that I had in the back of the oven kind of went out.
Yes, because all the air's flowing up and over.
I've killed it.
And maybe getting around the sides, but you want to feed the coals.
Yeah, exactly
and it
right.
needs air.
Yeah,
and it's interesting. Sometimes you think, well, as long as there's air somewhere, it'll burn it, right? But it really wants a direct path to it. And I was looking at it as well, going, all right, you've got to get this giant skewer off without dropping it into the embers.
So slide it back, slide the whole rack back.
So I think that definitely has some potential.
Dennis, get on that too.
I want to do a thing. What about fish? Where you could hang fish from, like smoked trout.
Yeah, okay.
Or salmon or something. You need to hang them though. Yeah. When you're doing fish. I'm not an expert on this, but
I don't eat seafood, but I'm hearing you here. That's okay.
So if I wanted to make a hanger, but here's the thing: you need head height. Now, thankfully, our ovens are quite tall.
They are.
So the D105 has actually got an internal height of, I think it's 525 mil
It's
from
huge.
floor to ceiling. So
I can almost
and that's
fit in
very
it.
intentional. But I want to make a hanger that you get into the oven sort of, this is going to be hard to describe, but you basically slide it into the oven, but fold it up. You slide it all the way in, and then you lift it up, and the front legs flip out. And now you've got this hanger that utilizes the height of the dome, and it sort of follows the curvature of the dome, and you could hang stuff off.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, but it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's one of those. It is an idea that I would love to make, and all of this stuff. You're like, why don't you make an andiron? Why don't you make this? That?
Would you
And
just get to work,
I would
man?
love to dedicate my time to just because that for me is playtime.
Yeah,
that is just my
it's
playtime.
great.
Like,
Good stuff.
hey Ben, you want to make a new product?
Yeah.
I'm like, hell yeah,
that'd be
please.
great.
You know, when I sign.
Oh, yeah.
But nowadays, I mean, the business is going terrifically well. But it is
Fantastic.
a business,
Yeah.
and it requires a lot of attention,
Yeah.
and it's not just all the fun stuff of like, oh, this is so cool.
I
I'm
know.
going to, make this new thing today.
Yeah.
It's all right. We've got to do some administrative stuff. All right, I need to find we're
Oh,
having
yeah.
some problems with this freight supplier. All right, I'm going to have to talk to them. And wow, the price on that has gone up by 18%. Do I need to find another supplier for that? Particular item?
Absolutely. There are more important things, is what you're saying.
The
Ben.
fun, not important. It's
Oh,
just,
come on.
do you want more ovens or not?
I could only fit one in my backyard. I just need the bits now.
I want to be here next year. All right, is that too much to ask?
No, we'll forgive you for that. That's all right. That's all right. When you cook in your oven, what are some of what's your favorite tool? What do you like using in your oven?
Tools like oven tools.
Yeah, oven
Look,
tools.
the one I use the most is the coal scoop. Yeah. And you can use it for heaps of stuff. But in terms of tending the fire, flipping logs up into place, the coal scoop for me, I can flip my logs, I can move stuff around, and I can rake the coals left to right, and that's the one that I use the most.
Yeah.
But the hook. I remember you were mentioning the hook.
I really like my hook.
It's brilliant. Like again, you can do fire tending with the hook as well.
You can.
The claw is what Grandridge Ford makes. It's got
Yeah, that's
two,
quite nice.
two hooks.
Velociraptor little.
It's aggressive.
It is aggressive, isn't it?
It's really solid too. So you can use that to pull out pans. You can like I've actually used it. When you put in a pizza base and you get a big bubble.
Oh yes, you
Just
you
pop it with that.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say I necessarily have a favorite because they're all. If you said, oh, cool, well, you get your coal scoop and your claw now, and that's it. And I'm like, well, I kind of need a pizza peel as well. And actually, I do need a brush.
You do need a brush.
And while I don't use them all the time, I don't use the brush constantly, it is quite important. So, yeah. I wouldn't say I have a favorite, but
there you got three favorites. Yeah. Okay, Ben, we are gradually coming to the end of this fabulous episode. To finish off these interviews, we do 20 quickfire questions. Okay.
I'll try.
Okay. Yeah, give it your
I'll try not
best
to
shot.
get quick fire, yeah? So
Yeah, they're
not
quick
long
fire.
answer.
No, they're not. No. So
Yeah.
it's not short fire. So you can't. You just got to go. All right.
Yeah,
and they're quick. Clive did really well on this, so
Yeah.
no pressure.
Yeah, I do remember Clive doing really well. He knew answers to things. And I was
Man,
like,
he was
no.
amazing.
Yeah.
Boom, straight out.
Yeah, okay, I'll try.
Okay, are you ready? These are different questions, though.
Oh, no.
What's the bravest thing you have ever done?
I'm already failing, Clive.
It's quick fire, not slow fire.
Bravest thing.
This is a question. What's the bravest thing you've ever done?
Well, part of me would say starting the business, that was, you could call that brave.
Yeah.
I tend to take calculated risk.
Yeah.
So I'm not like totally risk averse, but I like to calculate my risk pretty carefully.
Okay.
So when I was like, do I do bungee jumping? Have I leapt into a cave?
Nope.
No, I don't really do those crazy things. I'm going to have in the shower tonight. I'll be like, why did I tell
of
the
course
time
you should be there.
where I saved all those children?
I so need to go to question 2, which
Okay.
is what's the stupidest thing you've ever done?
Oh man, I tried to dive headfirst through a real estate sign one time.
Did you?
Yeah, it didn't come out very well. It turns out I
Had
thought
you
they were
had
made at the time.
Did you have a beer or two?
I'm not going to talk about that.
Okay,
but
fair
I
enough.
thought they were made of canvas. They were made of sheet metal. Next.
If you could teach one subject at school, what would it be?
Oh, if I could do F1 in schools. It's an awesome thing in high schools. They get high school students, budding engineers, and it's Formula One in schools. And they basically
cool.
get them to make this tiny little Formula One car that's powered by a little gas bottle. and you pierce the gas bottle and the race goes for like 2 seconds.
Oh, that sounds so fun.
It's amazing. And it
Okay.
teaches them all these manufacturing techniques.
So you'd love to do that?
F1 in school.
Okay.
It's not actually a subject, but
Okay, but it sounds pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
Okay. What's the worst mistake you have made designing or building your kit?
The first one, I would say the worst mistake is in the first 12 flue galleries that I made, I didn't put any stainless steel reinforcing fibers in them because I wasn't aware of them.
Yeah, right.
And so what happened was when those customers fired up their ovens and got them really up and going, those flue galleries split in half.
Okay,
right?
bugger.
Because they had no
Reinforcing?
tensile strength. They had no reinforcing.
Okay.
So I replaced all of those.
Yep.
And now everything we have is
Reinforced.
reinforced with stainless steel fibers. That was the dumbest thing I did.
It's not that dumb.
That's pretty dumb.
Okay. How long did it take you to grow your beard? I'm just starting.
It's about 9 months. I
Really?
reckon
No way.
to go, like maybe to get it to this length, it would be about maybe a year. I shaved it off on a dive trip.
I'm a
It was
bit
driving
jealous.
me nuts.
Oh, with your mask on
I
your
was wearing
face?
the mask, and the mustache was letting all this water into my mask, and I just cracked it. And I was like, right, it's coming off. And I bought a shaver, and I whittled this beard off, and I saw my face.
And then you regret.
I had my mum's chin.
Oh, dude.
And I was like,
oh, bless mum.
no, I love you, mum, but I'm going to let this beard grow back, and I'm never shaving it again.
Oh, well, I really like your beard. Anyway, when are we going to get together and cook in my wood fired oven?
Oh, man.
When are you coming to Brizzy?
I would actually love that.
Because you're not busy enough here, are you?
Yeah, no, I've got all the time in the world. I would love to come up. Actually, we're going to do more traveling and filming. So we're going to go back to America and visit customers there and film with
Fabulous.
them.
Great.
But we're going to do the same thing in Australia.
Great.
Where we film with customers and you tell us, I'm like I said,
Yeah.
engineer, not
Yeah.
chef.
Yeah.
Teach everyone how
I'll get
your
Chris
favorite dish.
Bozo around to my place and you come and visit
That's
us
cheating.
both.
That's cheating.
How-
It's got
how's
to be
that?
from you. Yeah, no,
He's amazing. When can I get a factory tour?
very soon.
Very
I'm
soon.
glad you asked.
Me too.
Immediately.
Stay tuned for that one. What's the next product you're going to produce, apart from my Andine?
Far out, no pressure. Look, I would love to make more of our charcoal grills. We had a fantastic range of these heavy-duty charcoal grills. So they're a standalone stainless steel charcoal grill. I would love to make those again.
You got a
Raising
backorder
and
list
lowering
ready?
platform. I've had so many people ask about
okay.
that. But
I'm on the list.
There's
right?
a pretty significant amount of development. But the most probable one will actually be a bigger precast oven.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
exciting.
it's a lot of work as well.
Okay,
But
let's talk about that next week. What would you order at drive-through?
if I could, the Mighty Angus burger
Oh,
from
it's
McDonald's,
pretty-
and they stopped. No, they changed it.
No, they
changed it, and then they stopped making
I
it
think
because
they
they wrecked it.
Did
Don't
they?
even get me started. Okay, things that I like, I'll find something that I really like these special burger sauce crackers at Coles and Woolies. They had these amazing
Really?
natural cracker company.
It's a supermarket,
crackers.
right? Yeah.
It's a supermarket, and they were these amazing biscuits, and it tasted like a Big Mac.
Did it really?
Yeah. And I love them.
Oh.
I went through boxes and boxes
Oh,
of them,
fantastic.
and then they stopped making them
See, I hate
because
that.
I liked them.
What are you completely bored of in life right now?
Driving to work in the dark
Really?
and then returning home in the dark. That's just winter. I
You're
don't
probably
mind
going to do that
cold.
today. Sorry, it's my fault. Sorry.
Yeah, no. That would be
Okay. What's one goal you're determined to achieve in your lifetime?
it. To be a really good dad.
Congratulations.
Yep. She's due in September.
And is that your first?
That is our first.
Congratulations to both
So-
of you. That's exciting.
Yeah, it
Well
is.
done, you.
Yeah.
Very good. Both of you. What is your favourite thing about living in Melbourne?
The food.
What's the least favourite thing about living in
The
Melbourne?
traffic.
Yeah, I'd agree with that this morning. How would you describe yourself?
I love to make things.
Yeah, you do, don't you? And you're very innovative.
You keep saying I'm innovative.
Oh, you
but I
are.
just
Have
like
you seen
making stuff.
Have you seen your 7 factories out
I have
there?
seen them.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, that's a very slow process.
It's okay.
Innovation seems to be one of this fast thing where it's like pow, 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 innovate. And I'm like,
you can innovate slowly, Ben.
incremental improvement.
Who's the best 007 of all time?
Sean McConnery.
I
And
agree.
I think I said his name wrong. McConnery.
Sean.
Connery. I was trying to say it really fast.
If you could have lunch with someone famous, who would that be and why?
There's a YouTuber called This Old Tony.
Yeah?
And I follow him, and he just makes stuff
Does
in his
he?
garage. And if you haven't seen him, he's hilarious. And I would just love to sit down.
Oh,
and
that's so
I would
cool.
love it.
What is a movie that made you cry?
The movie Cars. I cry very
That was a
easily.
It was a great movie.
No, I cried. It's terribly in movies. It's very easy to make me cry in a movie.
Are you old enough to know E.T.? Did you watch E.T.?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think I might have cried as
I
a
was
kid in
probably
E.T..
early. Like I don't think I really cried in E.T., but Yeah, if that's an example, like Cars is not a particularly tear-jerking film.
No.
That copy.
It's a great movie, though. It's really good. What's one thing you still have from your childhood?
I have this little box that I made to put floppy disks in, and I welded it up in TAFE. And I remember making this tiny little metal box with it had a pretty basic hinge, and I think it used a bit of Velcro to seal it up to hold the floppy disks in there. And I still got it kicking around somewhere.
That's amazing.
It was just one of the first things that I remember making out of metal.
Yeah.
And so I've hung on.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
That's nice. What's your favourite food?
I think butter chicken.
Butter chicken. It's pretty good, right?
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Last question. What would you bring on a one-way trip to Mars? It's one way. You're not coming back.
Jeez.
One way.
Like a genie in a bottle? Is that a possibility?
Like a time traveler.
Because if you only got one thing, you're not going to make it. You're going to need a lot more than one thing. Like you say air.
No.
Then you're like,
this is the engineer talking. Just one thing. You're going on Elon Musk's rocket. So just a genie in a bottle?
That would be great. Because frankly, one thing is just not going to cut it. Like you said, a leather man, I'm like, well, that's not going to get you very
but a
far
genie
on
could
Mars.
make you lots of things.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually pretty clever.
I don't know.
You did well there.
It's not a real thing.
Ben, it has been so much fun chatting with you today. Thanks very much for coming on to the Wood Fired Oven podcast and giving us all an insight into the guy behind the Fire Brick Company. Thank you so very much.
Mate, thank you. I've had so much fun.
It's
been awesome.
We've had a blast.
I think we have. I think we have. And hopefully your listeners pick up on that. It's been brilliant. Thank you for letting me be part of it. I really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. Don't forget, folks, to head over to Ben's website at... Oh, this is getting confusing now because you got a few.
The one we'll get you to go to is www.thefirebrickco.com. And if you're in Australia, /AU. If you're in New Zealand, /NZ.
That's clever.
And we'll be building out the Canadian site eventually as well.
Also, you can go check out Ben's company on Facebook, and that's just The Fire Brick Co. Is that right on Facebook? Okay, and also on the gram, the big Instagram, lots of lovely pics there at The Fire Brick Co.
Correct.
That's right. There you go. We're done. Thank you so very much, Ben. If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure you follow the Wood Fired Oven podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favourite podcasting app. Please consider posting a review on Apple Podcasts, as this really helps the show. Don't forget to check out woodfiredoven.cooking for more tips, tricks, and advice on cooking with fire. You can also see full episode notes and links. Please head over and join my Facebook group, Wood Fired Oven Chronicles, to discuss this episode and to see some behind-the-scenes info on my guests. Follow me on Instagram at marks_woodfiredoven and get in touch. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you in a couple of weeks for the next episode of the Wood Fired Oven podcast.